My sister stole my spotlight, trapped her boyfriend to have the first grandchild, and now expects me to raise her baby because she can't cope. In order to take my attention and have the first kid, my sister tricked her partner into getting pregnant. Now that she can't handle being a mother, she wants me to raise the child. After 6 years of dating, my longtime partner, Dexter, 29 million, and I, 28 million, were married last year. We met at a college function through common acquaintances. I was seeking a degree in business administration, and Dexter was studying engineering. Since the moment we clicked, we have been inseparable. To put things in perspective, I've always been competitive with my younger sister, Arya, 24F. She has attempted to do anything I did first or better since she was a young toddler. 3-year-old Arya hurled fits until our parents enrolled her in ballet courses when I was 7 years old. Even though she had never been interested in sports, she suddenly became interested in basketball when I joined the school team in the 8th grade. She insisted on taking lessons and putting in extra practice time when I started playing the piano at the age of 15 in order to surpass me at the yearly recital. Throughout high school and college, this trend persisted. Arya studied tirelessly till she received straight A's plus additional credit, while I received straight A's in my sophomore year. Arya put in endless effort to gain admission to an Ivy League university with a better scholarship after I got accepted to State University on a partial scholarship. Our parents supported her actions, viewing Arya as their ideal kid while frequently ignoring my accomplishments. While I had to work part-time jobs to help pay for my tuition, they spent thousands on her Ivy League education. After learning about my relationship with Dexter on social media, Arya began dating his younger brother Kenneth, 26 million, a few months later. Their connection appeared forced, and Kenneth was in his senior year of high school. But the fact that the girls were seeing brothers was cute in the eyes of our parents. Dexter and I developed a close bond throughout the years, helping one another through our early adult challenges, first jobs, and college. Our parents disapproved of our moving in together after graduation, calling it living in sin, yet they praised Arya's decision to live with Kenneth immediately after high school graduation as romantic. My grandparents were ecstatic when Dexter and I announced our engagement last year, anticipating the arrival of their first great-grandchild. In addition, my grandma gave me her antique cradle, saying she hoped to fill it soon. Arya was upset about this and couldn't bear that I was getting attention for once. She tried to overshadow us multiple times as we were organizing our wedding. Kenneth wasn't prepared, but she persuaded him to pop the question. We vehemently objected to her suggestion of a double wedding. She even attempted to attend our wedding wearing white, but our grandmother objected. Arya revealed her pregnancy at a family Sunday dinner 2 months after our wedding. During the news, Kenneth appeared startled and uneasy, nearly dropping his fork as she spoke. Arya purposefully became pregnant without telling Kenneth, as we later learned from mutual friends. In order to have the first grandchild in the family, she had stopped taking birth control without telling him. My parents were thrilled to have grandchildren. They focused all of their attention on Arya's pregnancy and totally forgot about our recent wedding. Every family get-together turned into a discussion about her nursery or baby shower ideas. While my father began establishing a college fund for the child, my mother spent hours shopping for baby clothes. After being given to me, my grandmother's antique cradle was abruptly moved to Arya's apartment since she needed it more. During a brother's night out, Kenneth told Dexter that he wasn't prepared to become a father. He wanted to concentrate on his recently launched IT profession first. He didn't know how to communicate his feelings of being confined and exploited without coming across like a villain. By claiming that their child required both parents, Arya persuaded him to stay. She even said that they needed to start living as a family and moved in with him at his parents' house. After the baby was born, the real issues began. Arya soon came to the conclusion that having a child was about more than just attracting attention and posting adorable pictures to social media. Even the most basic things, like changing diapers or getting up for night feeds, were difficult for her. Despite his best efforts, Kenneth was similarly unprepared. Both of them began to exhibit symptoms of overwhelm. Kenneth began staying late at work to avoid going home, and Arya would phone her mother at 3 in the morning to vent about how difficult things was. My folks invited Dexter and me to supper last week. We were mistaken to believe that it was simply a typical family supper. The fact that they had also invited Dexter's parents ought to have raised our first suspicion. My mother began discussing how anxious Arya was with the baby as soon as we sat down. She talked on how the kid was making things hard for her and how Arya needed time to figure out her life and job. She discussed how Arya needed a vacation and how her mental health was deteriorating. The unexpected thing came next. My parents said that since Dexter and I were stable, grown up, and had been married for a longer period of time, we need to adopt the child and raise it as our own. According to them, Arya could concentrate on her life and we wouldn't have to strive for our own child. I couldn't speak. Just because the real parents weren't prepared for the responsibilities they had consciously accepted, they were expecting us to look after someone else's child. We are currently under pressure from both of our families to change our minds. They constantly accuse us of being heartless for not assisting Arya when she is in need, but Dexter and I won't allow them to coerce us into accepting a duty that isn't ours. We never asked Arya to become pregnant, and we never asked her to utilize her pregnancy as a means of gaining attention. We're talking about a human being, not a car. Parenting proved to be more difficult than you anticipated, therefore you can't simply hand off your child. First update. Since my last post, things have become worse. My mother and Arya arrived at my place of employment yesterday during lunch. Somehow, the marketing company where I work in the city discovered my lunch routine. As I was making my way to my car to get lunch, they cornered me in the parking lot and made me listen to their suggestion. I could tell right away as they came up to me that this was no ordinary visit. Arya had black bags under her eyes and appeared to have not slept for days. She broke down in tears as she explained that she and Kenneth needed more time to work things out and that they weren't prepared for parenting. She insisted that parenthood was more difficult than she had anticipated and that she felt overwhelmed and confined. Then my mom told me about their new strategy. They proposed a 6-month trial period for Dexter and me to take the baby. They would come up with another plan if things didn't work out. They said this would ensure the infant was well cared for and give Arya and Kenneth time to organize their lives. In the parking lot, they even took a temporary custody agreement they had written out of their pocketbook. Arya went into a frenzy when I declined once again. She cried out that I was destroying her life and that I would help her if I truly loved her. She said that I was being bitter and self-centered by refusing to merely punish her. As she created the scenario, several of my coworkers, who were also on their lunch break, paused to gaze. My mom tried something different. She mentioned that I had always desired children and that perhaps this was God's will, that I should raise Arya's child rather than mine. This might be our chance to become parents, she remarked, adding that blessings might occasionally come in unexpected ways. Her statement made me furious for its arrogance. Prior to calling security, I instructed them both to depart. They arrived at our house with Kenneth's parents at approximately 7 p.m. that evening. It's clear that they organized this ambush in the hopes of applying pressure on us if they banded together. Fortunately, Dexter was at home. He adamantly urged them to go when they resumed their emotional manipulation. They said they wouldn't go unless we complied with their demands. As though he had nothing to do with the predicament, Kenneth's mother began to weep at how her son's life was being destroyed. My mother added that Arya needed help since she was experiencing postpartum depression. They utterly ignored the availability of real medical and psychiatric assistance, making it seem as though taking their child was the only way to assist her. Arya then revealed the shocking information. She had already purchased tickets to Europe with Kenneth. Regardless of our consent, they intended to leave the baby with us. She reasoned that we would be forced to care for the infant if they simply abandoned it. We had no choice but to step up because she had an entire plan in place. They would drop the kid off for babysitting and then head off for their trip. Her selfishness astounded me, and I told her right away that I would contact CPS if she left her child behind. I told them that it was illegal to abandon a child and that if they carried out their plan, I would not think twice about reporting them. They all felt shaken by this menace. My mother began pleading with us not to call the police, claiming that doing so would destroy Arya's life and future employment opportunities. Kenneth's parents came in, saying that if we agreed, they would raise Dexter's inheritance. They even offered to purchase us a new car and a larger house if we took the baby, but we refused. We threatened to call the police for trespassing if they didn't leave. They couldn't believe we wouldn't fall for their tricks, and their shocked expressions when they realized we were serious were almost humorous. Arya made one final attempt to guilt-trip me before she left. She reminded me of all the times I had expressed my desire to become a mother, how I had always cherished kids, and how this might be my only opportunity to become a mother. She also implied that I didn't truly want to be a mother because I had refused. I informed her that my desire to become a mother did not entail condoning her reckless actions. I told her that she was the one who made the decision to become pregnant without giving it much thought, and that she now had to face the repercussions of her choice. My mother cautioned us that we would come to regret our choice before they eventually went. She accused us of choosing to be unkind instead, saying that family should support family. In his will, Kenneth's father made it a point to reiterate that this would have an impact on our status. Dexter and I sat down and talked for a while after they departed. We came to the conclusion that we had to take action to guard against ambushes in the future. We're considering installing security cameras in our house, and I've alerted the security at work to any possible undesirable guests. The entire affair has demonstrated to us the extent to which our family would go in order to impose their desires on us. They obviously don't respect our personal space or our freedom to choose. If they persist in their harassment, we may pursue legal action. Second update. I made the decision to speak with my grandfather following the ambush at our house and the parking lot incident. He has always been our family's sane voice, and I needed his viewpoint. Since my grandmother's bridge club normally meets on Wednesday afternoons, I waited until I was certain he would be by himself. I brought his favorite lemon cake from the local bakery when I paid him a visit at their home. He was reading the newspaper in his study when I got there, as he normally did after lunch. When he first saw me, he grinned, but as soon as he saw how upset I was, his face immediately became serious. I took a seat in the worn leather chair across from him, the same chair I had sat in as a kid when I came to see him after school. I told him everything right away, including Arya's willful pregnancy, her incapacity to cope with motherhood, and our parents' absurd insistence that we accept her child. I described the ambush at work and how they threatened to leave the baby with us in an attempt to coerce us into accepting it. I could see his face shift from worry to rage as I talked. He already knew some of the narrative, but not the complete truth, which surprised me. He had heard an entirely different story from my parents. They claimed that Arya was upset when Dexter and I abruptly changed our minds about adopting the baby after first offering to do so. Arya was shown as the victim of our brutality, and we were portrayed as the bad guys who refused to assist families in need. When grandfather learned the truth, he became enraged. He found it incomprehensible that my mother, his own daughter, would attempt to make her elder daughter raise her younger daughter's child. Arya's intention to leave the kid with us and flee to Europe particularly infuriated him. He muttered that this wasn't how he and grandmother had brought up their kids as he continued to shake his head. Even though my grandmother was at her bridge club, he contacted her right away. This demonstrated how seriously he took the matter, as he rarely interferes with her social activities. He made me repeat everything to her when she got home 20 minutes later. Both of them were clearly distressed by the time I finished telling my story. This had gone too far, they both agreed. Grandfather claimed to have seen my parents continuously favor Arya throughout the years, but he had thought they would change their ways. He now understood that this mess was the result of parental partiality, which allowed Arya to act carelessly while expecting me to tidy up after her. Grandfather then made a surprising offer. Among his many holdings was a lovely property in a peaceful area approximately an hour's drive from our own residence. The current occupants had recently left the residence, which had been rented out for years. He said we needed to get away from this toxic circumstance and offered to give it to us. I tried to say no at first. It felt impossible to grasp that the house was worth at least $500,000. However, grandfather persisted. He claimed that he had intended to leave it to me in his will anyhow and that granting it to us now would enable us to get out of this predicament. My grandma concurred with him. Creating physical distance is sometimes the only way to deal with toxic family dynamics, she said. When we were ready, the house would allow us to establish our own family without any influence from either set of parents, she added. The very next day, they had the documents prepared by their lawyer. Although we wouldn't want to, the house was transferred to our names with the stipulation that we couldn't sell it for at least 5 years. According to our grandfather, this requirement was put in place to stop our parents from attempting to coerce us into selling it and handing Arya the proceeds. Dexter was in disbelief when I informed him about my grandparents' offer when I came home that night. Although he and my grandparents had always been friendly, this degree of assistance was surprising. We spoke about the offer and its implications for us all night long. Longer commutes to work would result from moving an hour away, but the calm and distance seemed worth it. We chose to accept the kind offer from my grandparents. Before we could move in, the house needed a few small repairs, but grandfather offered to pay for those as well. He declared his desire for us to start over, away from the manipulation and drama we had been enduring. Third update. We moved into the house my grandfather gave us 3 months ago. Our sanity has been greatly preserved by the distance. We changed our phone numbers as soon as we moved, limiting the new ones to my grandparents and a select group of reliable pals. In case someone tried to show up without permission, we also established a full security system with cameras. Our home has turned into a haven. The first month was devoted to repainting and personalizing it. I transformed a spare room into a library, something I've long desired, and Dexter turned another into his home office. We can plant and unwind in the spacious backyard, away from the chaos we left behind. Kenneth and Arya never visited Europe. They were forced to act as parents when they realized we were serious about calling CPS. Their common acquaintances have informed us that they are finally enrolling in parenting classes and looking for childcare assistance. When Kenneth's parents realized we wouldn't change our minds, they cease scaring us with the inheritance. Through our mutual connections, my mother continues to try to get in touch with us. She sends messages claiming that we are severing the family and that going away is childish. She even attempted to contact me using my work email account, but fortunately, my employer respects employee privacy. She wrote to me last week via one of my relatives, saying that we were being cruel by not assisting Arya and that she was depressed as a result of our behavior. Although he hasn't tried to get in touch with us directly, my father has been telling everyone he can that we left the family when they most needed us. Although he is attempting to portray us as the antagonists in this tale, most people who are aware of the real facts will appreciate why we had to keep our distance. Throughout it all, my grandparents have been our staunchest allies. They have made it plain to everyone that they support our choice and frequently pay us a visit in our new house. My mother was even instructed by grandmother to refrain from contacting us until she could respect our limits. They got into a heated argument over this, but my grandma refused to back down. In the end, Dexter's parents expressed regret for attempting to control us by threatening to take our inheritance. They acknowledged in a letter that their attempt to coerce us into taking Arya's baby was incorrect. We're still keeping our distance though. Months of coercion and pressure are not undone by a single apology. We've learned from the entire experience who genuinely cares about our welfare and who merely wants to utilize us to solve their problems. We've finally come to grips with our choice and are eager to begin a family of our own, on our own terms. We learned last week that Arya and Kenneth are finally going to parenting classes and couples counseling. We're happy that they're receiving assistance, but we don't intend to get in touch with them again anytime soon. It will take more than a few months of good behavior to restore the confidence that has been damaged. We're content with our quiet new life for the time being. In addition to joining a neighborhood community garden and making friends in our new neighborhood, we also intend to adopt a dog. Sometimes establishing enough distance to improve your personal happiness is the greatest approach to handle hurtful family relationships. We have no regrets about our choice, and that is precisely what we are doing. My parents sent me away after having my sister. They called me 12 years later to prove they're good parents after she failed. My parents gave up on me at 8 and sent me to live with my aunt. Before I turned 8, I knew they didn't like me. They basically had to deal with me. They had me in their early 20s, just starting their professions, and I watched them struggle to construct a life while raising me. Though I recently realized this, I think they resented me. I didn't understand why they hated me then. I spent my early years trying to please them, but nothing worked. My emotions were ignored. However, they behaved differently around friends and family. They couldn't let anyone know how horrible things were. They even convinced me to keep quiet out of fear of making them dislike me more. Years passed, and my mental and emotional health declined. I struggled in school and behaved out. I don't blame myself for my difficult childhood. My behavior would have changed if my parents had treated me better. They scolded, grounded, and punished me but failed. After my teachers complained about my behavior and grades, I misbehaved more to seek their attention. If being good fails, try being bad. This scheme failed. Mom got pregnant again around my 8th birthday. My parents were thrilled for the first time in years. I didn't understand the announcement at my birthday celebration. I learned weeks later. As my mom packed my luggage, my dad sat me down and told me I was going to live with my aunt. He said it was for my own good because I wasn't doing well there. Though young, I wasn't foolish. I knew they were dumping me. Replacement was coming with another baby. I had tantrums after being heartbroken. I wanted to stay with my family, friends, and parents, even if they mistreated me. They didn't care about my tantrums. They sent me to my aunt's house out of state. I felt miserable on the trip and begged my parents to let me stay. I committed to improve my grades and behavior, but they were set. I hadn't considered that this might not be about my grades or behavior back then. Even if I was the best kid, they might have hated me. My parents helped me settle in at my aunt's house for a few days, but I was still angry. However, my aunt helped me adjust. She may be the kindest and most loving person ever. My aunt, my dad's older sister and the oldest of 4 siblings, raised me because she had never married or had children. Although her siblings worked elsewhere, she worked on the farm their parents left them. She knew I was upset about moving in, so she reassured me that everything would be great and that I would enjoy the place once I got to know it. Her remarks helped me greatly. After 2 days, my parents left, and I broke down. My aunt was my only support. She constantly contacted my parents to talk to me to feel better, but they rarely responded. For 2 weeks I cried, and my aunt stayed with me. Eventually, I felt better. Living with her was so much better that I stopped missing my parents after a few months. I worked on the farm and went to school, and I was doing better. I had many friends, managed academics, and liked my teachers. My life improved once my parents sent me abroad. Even though we saw one another on vacations, I recognized I was better off without them. I was a troublesome youngster who needed a change of atmosphere, so my parents told my aunt I was moving in. After a few months, I told her my parents never wanted me, treated me horribly, and thanked her for taking me in. After that, my aunt treated my parents differently. She grew colder and distant. After that, we saw them at family parties and functions, but we haven't played much in 12 years. My happiness is greater without them, and they don't care. I have no relationship with my 12-year-old sister, which is probably best. Other family members say she's not growing up pleasant. She's one of the school's worst troublemakers at 12 and has a bad attitude. My parents have that issue, not me. My life is going fine. I'm in college to get a business degree so I can run the farm when my aunt retires. Since college is close, I can visit home every weekend, which is convenient. My parents called my aunt last weekend when I was at home because they couldn't reach me directly. First time in almost 12 years, we had a proper phone discussion. Their request was ludicrous, therefore it wasn't pleasant. I was curious when my aunt handed me the phone. After some little talk about my life, my parents said they were proud of my progress. They then said they wanted another go at parenthood. They asked me to stay in touch and move in after graduation. I was shocked since I couldn't fathom them requesting this. I questioned them why they suddenly wanted me back. Then they told me, my sister caused it. My sister is apparently even more of a difficult child than I was, which shames them. They wanted me to reconnect and show their friends and family they could raise wonderful kids. Reconnecting was about using me as proof that they were good parents, not about getting back together. I think people judge them. My sister is becoming a problem child like I was. They must demonstrate good parenting. It's absurd to want me back, yet they expected me to consider it. I told them on the phone that I wouldn't return and wouldn't assist them prove anything to their friends and family. I told them I was done with them, and they were too. I already described how poorly I did with my parents and how much better my life was after moving in with my aunt. I feel they were the problem, not troubled children. They didn't raise me, so saying they did would be a lie. My aunt handled the job well. I wouldn't let them acknowledge her efforts. Most of our relatives and acquaintances knew my aunt cared for me. Despite that, my parents planned to lie and say they had maintained in touch with me and visited often. I told them I wouldn't help spread this untruth and they were alone. They threw a tantrum, saying they had supported me and my aunt for 12 years. Instead, they delivered a monthly check that hardly covers anything. My aunt always paid the rest herself, but she never complained. Now they were trying to appear supportive with their limited efforts. They told me my sister had failed, which was humiliating, so I had to help them because they were my parents. I lost it then. I told them they were not my parents and no longer my family. I told them to leave me and my aunt alone because she was my only family. Update 1. Hello, everybody. When I first posted 2 days ago, most of you agreed I'm NTA. I appreciate that since it helped me understand. The only reason I doubted myself was that my parents had tried everything to convince me that what I said was bad in the preceding week. They made it sound like I was intentionally harsh. Honestly, I didn't believe I said anything wrong. Not rude or impolite. After reading the comments, I knew they were trying to pressure me into agreeing to their requirements and returning home to show off their successful parenting. Despite blocking them, they keep contacting me from various accounts and phone numbers, which is bothersome. My aunt told me to disregard it. She stated there was no need to apologize if I was right. She also asked several family members why my parents were suddenly so eager to prove they were decent parents. That's when she learned what happened. I heard she smoked at my sister's 12th birthday party 2 weeks ago. When my parents tried to confiscate her cigarette, she threw a huge rage that caused my mom to cry. My mom's older sister, grandparents, and other relatives told her at the party that their 12-year-old daughter had a cigarette because of their parenting failure. They said my parents could have prevented this by being more proactive. My parents have spoiled my sister since childhood, I've learned. They never refused her, gave her a substantial allowance, and allowed her to do everything she wanted unsupervised. She knew she could get away with anything, so my 12-year-old sister ruled them. After the cigarette incident, many friends and family criticized them for raising her improperly. Due to their desire to prove themselves good parents, my parents want me back. To demonstrate their success, they want to display me as a prize. Their behavior is pitiful. Most importantly, they should realize this strategy won't work because everyone knows my aunt reared me. Even my aunt's contacts disapproved of my parents' decision to send me away when I wasn't doing well. When your kids are struggling, you should help them, not ignore them. They had often advised my parents to bring me back after my sister's birth so we could grow up together. My parents ignored it, stating I was better with my aunt and they knew best. I don't understand how or if my parents can think of others. They could easily write off my sister while trying to gain me back by labeling her a failure. Her 12-year-old age terrifies me. I think counseling would be enough to get her back on track. I don't think my parents should guide me. This is the child they sent me away for, saying they wanted to save time, money, and energy for her. However, they have raised and treated her this way. They say they sacrificed their oldest kid for her, but I don't think they care about us. I don't think my parents were meant to be parents. I could easily resent my sister because she got everything I never did from our parents: love, care, affection, money, and time. Personally, I feel awful for her. All of that isn't enough to raise a child properly. I'm more surprised that my parents failed both of their children. I hope they quit calling and messaging me since I don't want to talk to them after what my aunt and other family members taught me. Next time they guilt trip me, I'll tell them. Update 2: I've remained silent for a few days, but if my folks tried to guilt me again, I'd tell them. They did. They called me from a new number 2 hours ago. I was told to apologize and return home as soon as I picked up. I was feeling sick today and moody. That phone call made matters worse, and I snapped. I shouted at them, saying I wouldn't apologize since what I said was true. They were not my parents. They had done nothing to deserve that label. I'd call my aunt my family because she raised me. I informed them they hadn't seen me in 12 years. Before that, they ignored me. They should blame themselves if they can't accept my not seeing them as family. They should stop phoning me to make me feel awful about something I don't have to do. They interrupted me, saying that while my aunt reared me, they supported us and we shouldn't forget that. I said the money they sent barely met my expenses. My aunt paid for practically everything herself, so my parents' money was useless. If they had kept me, they wouldn't have had to pay child support. They should quit acting like providing money was a tremendous favor to my aunt. I informed them child support was the very least after sending their son to her. She kept this from the family out of love, even though she could have ruined their reputation. They should stop talking about their spending because money isn't everything. The incident at my sister's birthday celebration should have taught them that. They also threw money to their youngest daughter, who is now a spoiled brat. They called her a failure, but my parents failed. They failed us both. They reacted defensively when I said it. They said my sister was happy and I didn't understand. They said her birthday party incident was one time. But I know happy kids, especially 12-year-olds, don't smoke because they can. Telling them they were probably attempting to convince themselves didn't mean I believed they were trying to raise my sister. They did the same mistakes with her as with me, but in reverse. They neglected me but spoiled her with money and too much attention. They didn't govern her correctly during their time with her. I knew this even though I'd never met the youngster. They needed to contact me to prove they were decent parents, showing how little they cared about their kids. They wanted to look like good parents, not be good parents. Perhaps this was too much truth for them. They yelled at me, cussed me, and said I had no idea what I was talking about. Their defensiveness and ranting validated my accuracy. We argued for a few more minutes until they said they were glad they sent me away years ago. They said they were glad they selected their daughter since I wasn't good enough to be their son. They hung up, perhaps fearing their goodbyes would hurt me. I didn't care. I was glad I won the dispute because otherwise they wouldn't have resorted to such low blows. Now, I hope they think twice before fighting or calling me again. Only my inability to aid my sister bothers me. I feel bad because she might survive outside my parents' terrible atmosphere. But sometimes you win and lose. Third update. A week has passed since I spoke to my folks. That last phone call was the last time they disturbed me, which is better for them. From what I know, they've been telling the family that my sister's cigarette event was one time and won't happen again. But nobody is duped. She may have more going on. This may have been her first cigarette, but who knows what else she's done. My parents were the only ones responsible. It was evident that their lack of monitoring and discipline caused this. I don't usually condemn someone without knowing them, but my parents deserve it. What kind of folks abandon one child while pregnant with another? Who? My parents. I'm delighted my family is now seeing how broken they are and keeping their distance. After years of silence, my aunt has begun to reveal why they left me with her. They didn't want me around because they wanted to spend more time with their other child, not because I was a troublesome kid. My parents made me a problematic kid, not me. If I were to blame, I wouldn't have thrived after moving away. My aunt hid this for 12 years because she didn't want to destroy my parents' reputation, but now she thinks they deserve it. Due to their defensiveness, my parents are already feared. Denial regarding parenting failure is evident. Everyone now knows my parents are the culprits after hearing our story, that they abandoned me to my aunt. They don't deserve my sister or myself. Some may believe we're overreacting and don't need to kick them while they're down. But this wouldn't have happened if they hadn't called me to help them pretend to be wonderful parents. They deserve it. Update 4 posting again after 2 weeks brings a huge update. Maternal grandparents are fighting for custody of my sister. My parents sent me to live with my aunt, but I've always maintained in touch with most of my family. I have a good relationship with my grandparents, so when they called a few days ago to ask about my parents, I told them. They were delighted I finally told them about my parents' mistreatment. They believed my parents had a solid cause to send me away for years. Now they know no cause could justify putting your child away. They apologized for not discovering the truth sooner, and I said it was okay. Everyone struggles, and I didn't seem to be hurting. It would have been hard to know without being told. After the cigarette incident with my sister, my grandparents heard allegations about my treatment from other family members. My aunt finally told me how my parents abandoned me after leaving me off at her house. My grandparents decided to investigate after hearing this. They didn't want their younger granddaughter to experience what I did. After talking to me, they discovered my parents hadn't changed. They still cared more about appearing good parents than being there for their kids. That's when my grandparents fought for custody of my sister to raise her. My half-sister lied, saying I was a call girl and drug dealer, and I got kicked out. Years later, my dad's message on my wedding reopened old wounds. I'm Emma, and I would have laughed a year ago if you had told me that my own family would abandon me. However, that is precisely what took place, and it all began with Leah, my half-sister. Leah has always been dramatic, but I never thought one of her falsehoods would ruin my life. She had to be the center of attention all the time. Even though we were never very close, I made an effort to be a good big sister when I was growing up. Leah was born a few years after our dad remarried when I was 10 years old. She could do no wrong. She was the golden child. She was loved by my father and my stepmother, Margaret, and she understood how to take advantage of it. Leah was skilled at manipulating others, but I was unaware of how far she would go. At first it was subtle. Little remarks about me, such as Emma's acting weird lately, or Emma's been staying out late, would be made by Leah to Dad and Margaret. I'm concerned for her. They didn't give it much thought at first. At the age of 24, I was living alone and attempting to make sense of my post-college life. However, Leah continued to sow doubt, and I was unaware of it until it was too late. My father called me one day. I sensed something was wrong because of the tension in his voice. He said, "We need to talk, Emma. Will you please come over?" Unaware that my entire world was going to fall apart, I went to their house. Margaret appeared to have made up her mind about me when I entered the living room since she was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. Leah was also present, but she appeared far too innocent to be the person who had just turned my family against me. Dad wasted little time. "I need you to be honest with us about what Leah told us. Do you use drugs?" It was so ridiculous that I laughed. "What? No, of course not. What is the source of this?" Margaret squinted her eyes. "Leah reported that during your stay last weekend, she discovered some pills in your room." I went cold. I believed that Leah had not been in my room. Nothing suspicious was ever left there by me. That is untrue. I have no idea what she is discussing. Leah, however, spoke out, her big eyes and phony worry evident. "Emma, I have been quite concerned about you, but I didn't want to say anything. I felt you might need help because of the unusual way you've been acting." I gaped in shock as I looked at her. "You're telling lies. Never in my life have I used drugs." However, what I stated was irrelevant. The untruth had already been ingrained in their heads by Leah. Margaret and Dad looked at each other, and I knew they trusted her more than I did. The fact that I had never before given them any cause to suspect me was irrelevant. Margaret continued, "That's not all. Leah said that you've had relationships with dubious individuals. Are you selling yourself, Emma?" It seemed as if someone had hit me. Because of what Leah said, my own stepmother, who had reared me for years, was accusing me of being a prostitute. It was unbelievable to me. "No, it's unbelievable that you would even ask me that. Leah is telling lies." Again though, it didn't feel like my words mattered. They were entangled in the web that Leah had spun. Dad continued, "Emma," in a softer tone now, as if he wanted to believe me but was unable to. "All we want to do is assist you. We must know if you are in difficulties." "I'm not having any problems." With tears in my eyes, I screamed, "Leah is deceiving you." Leah gave me a wide-eyed stare while continuing to play the innocent victim. I'm only attempting to assist you, Emma. I don't want you to become involved in negative situations like some of my pals did. I was unable to bear to look at her. You're intentionally doing this, I spit out. You wish for them to despise me. Margaret got to her feet. That's sufficient, Emma. We can't trust you unless you can be truthful with us. We must step back, even if we love you. Step back. They were expressing that they no longer wanted me around. That day, I felt numb when I left the house. Leah's falsehoods had caused my own family, who were meant to support me, to turn against me. I was at a loss for what to do. My mother lived across the nation, and although she believed me, there wasn't much she could do from such a distance. Worst of all, Leah continued to embellish her lies. She began spreading tales about me being a drug addict across the town. After hearing the rumors, my supervisor fired me because he didn't want an untrustworthy employee. My friends stopped phoning, and I felt even more alone. I lost everything because of Leah's lies, my reputation, my career, and my family. She was enjoying the attention as I was in a downward spiral. Whenever I attempted to approach her, she reframed the situation so that I appeared to be the unstable one. When Dad contacted me again to inform me that they no longer wanted me around, it was the last straw. It's best if you stay away, Emma, until you can get help. You must not be around Leah. She has endured enough. Had enough? In their perspective, Leah was the victim, even though I had lost everything. I was finished. In an attempt to start again, I packed up my belongings and relocated to a different city. However, the harm was already done. I wasn't sure whether my relationship with my family could ever be restored once it was destroyed. Months passed, and each time I considered contacting them, I recalled their initial reaction. As if I were a complete stranger rather than their daughter. For that, I couldn't forgive them, and I couldn't forgive Leah either. However, as time went on, I started to question whether Leah's actions were more complex. What type of individual would ruin someone's life by lying like that? Was she experiencing something more serious than jealousy? I had to move on with my life, with or without them, so it didn't really matter anymore. The agony of losing my family still aches a year after everything fell apart, even though I've been able to restore some of what I lost. I'm not sure if they'll ever expose Leah's deceit or if I'll ever be able to trust them again. One thing is certain though, they will have to confront the reality of Leah's true nature if they ever hope to have me back in their life. Holding my breath is not an option. It only grew worse after the altercation with my family. I made an effort to move on, but it wasn't that easy. The wound from the betrayal festered and got deeper every day. My life was tainted by Leah's falsehoods, and I was unable to avoid the repercussions. Not only did I lose my friends and work, but I also lost my identity. The final betrayal occurred when my father kicked me out of the house, challenging everything I believed to be true about myself. I can still clearly remember the day it happened. Desperate to convince my father of the truth, I had returned to his home. Perhaps if I calmly and directly explained everything to him, he would comprehend. I wanted to think that the father who reared me was still inside of him, the father who taught me how to ride a bike, who used to support me at soccer matches, and who always emphasized the importance of family comes first. I wanted my father to be like that again. However, I could feel the tension in the air as soon as I went through the door. Margaret was sitting with her arms folded in the kitchen, looking at me as if I were a nasty object that needed to be removed. Naturally, Leah was not present, but I knew she was there, most likely listening in the background while she waited for everything to fall apart the way she always desired. With a harsh expression on his face, my father stood at the kitchen counter as though he had already decided before I had a chance to say anything. I said, attempting to speak steadily, "Dad, we need to talk. You must hear my side of the story." The hush that followed his delayed response was oppressive. My heart was thumping louder in my throat with every second that went by. He sighed at last. "Emma, I'm not sure if I have anything more to say. You've been granted time. We have attempted to assist. You haven't assisted me at all." With a trembling voice, I shot back. "All you've heard is Leah. I can verify that everything she has told you is false. Just listen to me, please." I could feel Margaret's judgment stabbing me as she shook her head. "We've heard enough, Emma. Leah has just been worried for you and you haven't done anything to disprove her." I became so frustrated that I was unable to contain it any longer. "Leah is lying out of jealousy. This is how she receives the attention she has always desired. Do you not see? She's playing tricks on you." However, my words were ignored. My father's face remained unchanged. He wasn't even taking into account my version of events. "This isn't good for you or Leah," he stated in a quiet but forceful voice. "Emma, I believe it would be best if you stopped visiting, at least until you received assistance. Ask for assistance. Incredulous, I repeated. You believe that I am the one in need of assistance. Nothing has gone wrong on my end. You're tossing me out because of Leah's falsehoods, even though I'm not selling myself or using drugs. My dad's eyes become stony. This hostility in the house is unacceptable. I apologize, but you must go. Margaret's lips formed a narrow line as she nodded in agreement. It's best that way. Stunned, I stood there. It was this. I was their own kid, and they were choose Leah's lies above me. I had the impression that everything I had ever done for them, every loving moment, every memory we had together, was being instantly obliterated. I gave my father one last glance in the hopes that he might change his mind or show some glimmer of hesitation. However, nothing was present. I couldn't find him. Without saying another word, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me with tears in my eyes. A final brutal punctuation to the life I had known, the sound reverberated in my mind. The initial months following expulsion were a haze of hopelessness. While I was trying to put my life back together, I moved in with a friend named Jessica, who graciously allowed me to rest on her couch. But despite my best efforts to divert my attention, I was unable to get rid of the sense of abandonment. My chest ached every time I saw a family in the park or heard someone talk about their parents. Leah's actions of turning everyone I cared about against me were on my mind constantly. Jessica made an effort to be encouraging, but it was clear that she didn't completely get what I was going through. One evening, as we sat on her small balcony, she said, "Perhaps you should just get in touch with them again. By now they might have calmed down. You could." "No," I cut in, my tone acrid. "I'm not wanted by them. They were quite explicit about that." She gave me a pitying glance, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I knew she wanted to help, but you can't truly comprehend what it's like to have your family turn against you, to be deceived by those who are meant to love you without conditions, unless you've been there yourself. It wasn't easy, but I tried to reconstruct my life over the next 5 years. Even in the new city, the rumors that Leah disseminated had followed me. There were whispers about me. I applied for employment, but every time I was turned down, it felt like another nail in the coffin of who I was before. People's perceptions of me changed. They thought I was broken and unreliable. Then, almost 2 years after my expulsion, an unforeseen circumstance occurred. I was working at a little cafe on a Saturday afternoon. Even though it wasn't my ideal career, working as a barista was a reliable job that helped me pay my bills. A man entered when I was cleaning the counter. Although he had a somewhat familiar appearance, I was unable to identify him. He paused before asking, "Emma?" Curious, I turned to him. "Yeah?" He gave a clumsy smile. "I doubt that you recall me. I'm Leah's Dylan." When Leah's name was spoken, my stomach fell. Dylan. God, I now recalled him. When we were younger, he had dated Leah for a couple of years. Around the time Leah began spreading those stories about me, they broke up. Why on earth was he in this place? All I wanted to do was turn and leave, but I mustered a kind grin. "Oh, Dylan, I see. What's going on?" He raked a hand through his hair and shifted uneasily. "I realize this may seem strange, but I've been intending to speak with you for some time. After everything that has transpired, I simply need to clear my conscience, even if I wasn't sure if I should." I arched an eyebrow. "Clear your conscience?" He seemed truly sorry as he sighed. "It has to do with Leah and what she said about you. The prostitution and the drugs were all lies." My throat tightened each breath. It felt more genuine after hearing it from someone else who knew Leah well. I answered, "I know that," in a tone that was colder than I had intended. "But my family doesn't." Dylan looked at the floor and nodded. "I apologize. I understand. I should have spoken out sooner, but I was unaware of the extent to which she would take it. She had her problems, Leah. Emma, she was always envious of you. I believe that's the reason she did it." I gazed at him, attempting to comprehend his words. "Jealous of what?" "You," stated Dylan plainly. "You had your own life, were older, and were more self-reliant. Even if you were unaware of it, Leah always felt as though she was living in your shadow. She wanted attention, and when she saw that making you appear terrible would get it, she went for it. She told me about it after our breakup, although I was unaware of its full scope at the time. Despite her shame, she was unsure of how to stop. My mind was racing. Had Leah acknowledged it? Had she really admitted to fabricating it all? And Dylan had been aware all along. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Anger rising within me, I demanded. "This could have been avoided by you. Years ago my family could have learned the truth." Dylan repeated, "I'm sorry," in a low voice. I had no idea how. Leah has a way of making people question themselves, and I didn't think they would trust me. She also played with my head. Barely believing what I was hearing, I shook my head. Was jealousy the ultimate cause of all the suffering and heartache Leah had caused? That's why I was expelled by my father. That's why I lost everything in my life, my career, my family. Dylan waited for me to say something. But I was at a loss for words. I was no longer even able to look at him. I was only angry. I murmured, "You should go," and turned my back on him. He repeated, "Emma, I'm really sorry," one final time before slipping out of the cafe. I tried to stabilize myself as the weight of everything fell on me while I stood there clutching the counter. My life had been ruined by Leah's falsehoods, and it was all because she was envious. Finally, years later, I knew the truth. Now though, what good was it? I kept thinking about approaching Leah after that day. My anger was unlike anything I had ever felt before. It engulfed me, recreating every moment of betrayal and keeping me up at night. I was looking for answers. I wanted her to confess what she had done to everyone, including our father and me. Dylan had told me about Leah's deception years ago. I initially believed that learning the truth would bring some sort of closure, but it just served to reignite old hurts. I didn't need their apologies, especially not just now, because I had constructed my life without my family's love and support. For the first time in a long time, I was in a good place. More importantly, I had found someone who embraced me for who I was, without the baggage of my history, and I had a new career that I loved. Marketing for a nonprofit. 2 years ago, Noah and I met through common acquaintances, and things felt natural as soon as we spoke. He saw me, Emma, as the person I had become in spite of everything, without interfering in my family life or criticizing me for the strained ties. I thought my life was finally coming together again when Noah proposed. We were preparing a modest, low-key wedding. I didn't require a lavish party. It was important that we begin our new life together and create a family free from deceit and treachery. Life wasn't that easy, of course. It had been years since I had spoken to Margaret or my father. I severed all connections after they expelled me. I blocked them on social media, switched cities, and updated my phone number. Occasionally, I would learn through rumors that they wanted to know how I was doing, but I never answered. I remained silent even after Dylan came clean. How would I respond? That they blindly trusted Leah and believed a lie about me, their own daughter, and that I had to suffer as a result. For that I couldn't forgive them. Then, around 6 months into the planning of our wedding, I received an unexpected email. My father gave it to me. I opened the screen after staring at it for a very long time. As I read his words, my pulse raced in my chest. "Since you departed, Emma, you have been on my mind every single day. I can't express how sorry I am for all that has transpired, and I know we made a grave error by choosing to believe Leah over you. Margaret and I want to put things right because we miss you more than words can express. I've heard that you're getting married via a pal. As I've always dreamed, I would adore being there to accompany you down the aisle. Give me an opportunity to express my regret, Emma." With trembling hands I set down my phone. Did he wish to apologize? After all these years. He wanted to make amends after what they had done to me. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. Noah asked me what was going on after noticing that I was preoccupied, but I was at a loss for words. I hadn't told him anything that had transpired with my family. Although he was aware of their absence from my life, he was unaware of the depth of the betrayal. It felt almost like another lifetime since I had buried it so deeply. I finally sat Noah down one evening and told him everything, including about Leah, my father, and Margaret, and how they had abandoned me when I most needed them. I informed him about Dylan's confession and how I still couldn't forgive them despite knowing the truth. With a contemplative expression on his face, Noah listened patiently without pressuring me to make a choice. "There is nothing you owe them," he added quietly. "You are free to choose not to have them at the wedding. Emma, this is your day. Our future is at stake, not the past." I was reassured by his remarks, but they didn't help me decide. Even though I knew my family would never be the same, I still felt a part of me missed them. I wanted my father to be present on one of the most significant days of my life, to escort me down the aisle. However, could I truly pardon them for their actions? I finally responded to my father's email 1 week later. I told him that although I was grateful for the apology, I wasn't prepared to move on. The devastation was too great. However, I was willing to allow him to attend the wedding if he realized that our relationship would never be the same. Margaret and Leah weren't invited. There was no negotiating that. My phone rang 2 days after I sent that email. Even though I didn't recognize the number, I felt compelled to take it up. My father's voice was tremulous and emotional as he said, "Emma." At first I remained silent. I waited for him to say something, just listening. At last, he said, "I received your email. I'm thrilled that you'll allow me to attend the wedding, but I must beg. Will you not extend an invitation to Leah?" My stomach turned over. I could see where this was headed. "No, father, Leah is not invited?" "You understand why." The person on the other end of the line paused for a while. His breathing was audible as he deliberated over his next sentence. "She's your sister, Emma. She is still family. Even though I know what she did was horrible. Since then, she has matured significantly. She wants to make amends and is remorseful for what she done." I could sense my old wrath building. "Leah ruined my life, Dad. You and Margaret blindly believed her lies, and I lost everything as a result. She cannot simply attend my wedding and act as like nothing is wrong." "I get that," he responded in a beseeching tone. "However, this is an opportunity for us to reunite and begin our family's healing process. If Leah isn't at your wedding, I can't attend. It wouldn't be appropriate." I went cold. A command. On my wedding day, he was threatening to not attend unless I included the guy who destroyed my life. "Are you serious at this moment?" My voice was thick with incredulity as I asked. "Emma, I'm not kidding. I can't abandon Leah, even though I want to be there for you because I love you. She is also my daughter. I had the feeling that I would get sick. Are you really going to pick her over me once more?" My voice quivered with anger as I asked. "You're still supporting her in spite of everything that's happened?" "It's not about sides," he shouted frantically. "It has to do with family. We must unite." "No," I responded in a hard, icy tone. "We wanted you to be there for me when I needed you. You didn't. And now you're attempting to spoil my happiness once more." "Please don't do this, Emma," he pleaded. "This can be fixed." "No, we can't, Dad." My hand trembled as I hung up. My eyes were watering, but I fought the need to cry. I refused to let him, Leah, or anybody else ruin this day. To get here, I had had to fight too hard. It was bittersweet in the months before the wedding. On the one hand, I was getting married to my soulmate. My father, on the other hand, would not be present. Even though I stuck by my decision, it still stung. I secretly hoped that he would pick me, that he would see how much suffering he had caused by supporting Leah all those years ago. However, he didn't. He was unable to. I made an effort to concentrate on the positive aspects, such as selecting the ideal outfit, deciding on the food, and selecting flowers with my maid of honor, Rachel. Throughout it all, Noah was encouraging and never pushed me to bring Leah or my father. He saw that this wedding was not about the shattered remnants of my past, but rather about us and our future. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my family's absence as the day drew near. My mom lived across the country, and we were no longer close, so I knew she couldn't make it. Although I didn't hold it against her, her attempt to maintain her objectivity during the whole situation with Leah caused a gulf between us that we were never able to fully close. Rachel threw me a tiny bachelorette party the night before the wedding. Just some nice laughter, lots of wine, and a few close friends. I was able to put everything else aside and simply have fun for a few hours. However, once the party ended and my friends departed, I was left sitting by myself in my apartment, gazing at my own wedding invitation. Even though I knew my father wouldn't show up, I had mailed him one. A part of me wanted to tear it up, to completely remove him from my life. However, another part of me, possibly the one that still missed the family I lost, was unable to do it. When the wedding day finally came, it was just as I had imagined. As Noah and I stood at the altar with our selected family and friends, the sun shone and the air was warm, and I felt at ease. My decision had been the right one. My dad wasn't present. Leah wasn't either. And I wasn't burdened by their absence for the first time. They weren't necessary for me to prove that I was happy and that I had moved on. It was sufficient that I had discovered my own happiness and my own family. I experienced a sense of closure as Noah and I exchanged vows, not the type that comes from reconciliation or forgiveness, but rather from making your own decisions and accepting that some scars cannot be healed. I felt liberated as we danced beneath the stars following the wedding. I had allowed the hurt of my family's betrayal to define me for a very long time, but now that I was standing next to Noah, I realized that my past did not dictate my future. Nothing, not Leah, not my father, not anyone, could take away the love and trust I had forged in my new existence. I felt whole for the first time in years. The day of the wedding had been ideal. I felt at peace for the first time in years as Noah and I stood at the altar. It was the start of a new chapter in my life, one free from the heartache, deceit, and betrayals of the past. For the first time, I gave myself permission to think that I could create a life without my family's shadow. However, reality struck in as Noah and I returned from our brief honeymoon in the days after the wedding. I felt burdened by my choice to sever my relationship with Margaret, Leah, and my father. They hadn't offered an apology or a last-minute request for pardon. By refusing to invite Leah and refusing to back down when my father gave me his ultimatum, I had made it plain that I was done. However, after you make those choices, the world doesn't end. Individuals change, and occasionally they spiral. 2 months or so after the wedding, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. My blood raced cold when I heard the message after I had left it on voicemail. "This is Margaret, Emma, please give me a call back. It's Leah. She's in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm. Emma, please, we need you." I went cold. Leah had attempted suicide. I felt sick to my stomach for a moment. The sister that had destroyed my life, lied about me, and split up my family, Leah, was in the hospital after attempting suicide. I suppressed the guilt that washed over me. I was not at blame for this. I wasn't accountable for Leah's decisions. She had made them on her own. Nevertheless, it troubled me that Margaret had contacted me and begged me to come. In an attempt to determine Margaret's tone, I listened to the voicemail once more. Was it a desperate move? Fear? Feeling guilty? I had no idea. She was urging me to return to the mess I had worked so hard to escape, even though I hadn't spoken to her since I had gone. At last, I plucked up the confidence to tell Noah as he was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I said as neutrally as possible, "I got a voicemail from Margaret. Leah is in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm." His forehead was wrinkled with worry as he looked up from the stove. "What was it she said? Is Leah all right?" I acknowledged. They didn't give much detail. Margaret immediately asked me to come to the hospital after saying she was there. She sounded frantic. After wiping his hands on a towel, Noah approached me and put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "How are you going to proceed?" "Uncertain," I shrugged. "I'm not sure. After years of attempting to escape them all and the harm they inflicted, I feel as though I'm being pulled back into it. I'm not sure if I can make it." Noah spoke in a soft yet forceful tone. "You owe them nothing, Emma. Your family made their decisions and Leah made hers. You are not accountable for her or her fate." Even though his statements confirmed what I was thinking, it didn't help me decide. There was a part of me that felt obligated, the part that still remembered Leah as the young child I had once attempted to be a big sister to. However, my logical side, which had established a life free of their poison, understood I couldn't turn back. I stayed up that night reliving the things that had brought us all to this point. The years of manipulation, the lies told by Leah, and the numerous times my father had picked her over me. With Leah in such a vulnerable state, was it really possible for me to return to their life at this point? What would that achieve? I considered the potential consequences of actually visiting the hospital. How would I respond? Would they want me to overlook Leah's suffering because she was in a horrible position and forgive her? What if I wasn't able to forgive her? What would happen if I went and it made things worse? I decided what I would do the following morning. I had no intention of going. I could tell Noah was worried, but he was on my side. "Are you certain?" he inquired. "I don't want you to come to regret this." I tried to persuade myself as much as he did, saying, "I'm sure. Leah got here because of her decisions. I've wasted too much time attempting to make things right that weren't my responsibility. I refused to be coerced into returning by their guilt. I didn't call Margaret back as a result. I chose not to visit the hospital. I stayed away because I preferred the tranquility I had battled so hard to the mayhem my family constantly brought." I got another message a few weeks later, this time from my dad. His voice was something I had not heard since the wedding ultimatum. "It's Dad, Emma. I can see why you might be upset, but Leah is now in treatment and I believe it would be very meaningful for her if you came to see her. She is receiving assistance. She is attempting to atone for her actions and has acknowledged what she done. I realize this is a lot to ask, but perhaps it's time for the family to begin mending. Please give it some thought." I didn't respond, so I erased the mail. Leah was in treatment. My father said she was seeking assistance and confessing to all she did. However, I was wise enough to avoid becoming entangled in that web again. Even if Leah was making amends now, it didn't negate what she had done to me. She had been manipulating others for years. The years of harm and the reality that my family had deserted me when I most needed them were not undone by it. I got additional messages in the weeks that followed. Margaret called multiple times and left heartfelt, lengthy voicemails expressing their desire to reunite as a family and how Leah was getting better. To give Leah a chance, my father texted me to come see her in the rehab center, but I consistently ignored him. I had already decided. About 6 months after Leah's suicide attempt, I happened to run into Dylan one afternoon. It came as a complete surprise. On a bright Saturday, Noah and I were having lunch when I noticed him across the street. At the same moment he noticed me and he approached before I could dodge him. "Emma," he murmured with a startled tone. "I was surprised to see you here." A rush of unease washed over me as I attempted a grin. Since Dylan told me about Leah's falsehoods years ago, I hadn't seen him. It felt weird to see him now, after everything. "Yeah, just out with Noah," I said, nodding to my husband, who was observing us from the cafe table with interest. After a little pause, Dylan resumed his conversation. "I'm not trying to bother you, but have you heard anything about Leah?" I tensed up. "Enough has been said," he went on, disregarding the icy tone in my voice. "She's in rehab. Emma, she's making a sincere effort. She has now acknowledged everything, even though I know she damaged you. Perhaps she is resolving her problems." I interjected, my voice hard. "Dylan, stop. I'm glad she's receiving assistance, but it doesn't make a difference in my opinion. I've moved on." Dylan's eyes were a mix of grief and pity as he gazed at me. "I truly understand. However, Emma, individuals can change. Perhaps Leah is attempting to make amends." I became impatient and yelled, "I don't need her amends. I have no obligation to her. Her falsehoods caused me to suffer for years. Because she feels bad, I won't allow her back into my life at this time." Dylan let out a sigh, obviously understanding that he couldn't make me change my decision. "All right, I simply felt you ought to be aware." I wanted the talk to stop, so I nodded. "I appreciate you telling me." Before leaving, he offered me a melancholy little smile. After observing him leave, Noah turned to face me. "Are you all right?" Even though I wasn't positive, I nodded. Dylan had reminded me of past pains and memories, but I wasn't going to allow it to take me back there. I said, "I'm fine," attempting to put the encounter behind me. "All I want to do is concentrate on us and our lives." The texts from Margaret and my father became less frequent over time. I didn't care that Leah had finished her time in rehab and seemed to be doing well. I had decided to permanently cut them off, and I had no intention of changing my mind. Late at night, I would occasionally ponder what my life could have been like if my father had never believed Leah and she had never told those falsehoods. Would our family still exist? Would the course of events have been different? However, those sentiments were short-lived, and I consistently ignored them. With Noah, I now had my own family. For me, it was sufficient that we were creating a life together free from the poisonous dynamics of my past. The calls eventually ceased completely. Despite their entreaties, my father and Margaret must have recognized that I was not returning. Leah also appeared to realize that she couldn't repair what she had damaged. So I put the past behind me, where it belonged, and moved on. I discovered my wife's infidelity after my cancer diagnosis, rewrote my will for my children, and decided to hide my illness from her. On November 5th, I got the news I had been most afraid of: aggressive stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which was confirmed by every test. This will essentially be my last holiday season. I have a strange feeling of acceptance, oddly enough. My loved ones will be taken care of, and I have had a happy life. I hadn't told my wife Emily about the test since I'm a naturally private person. Until I received conclusive answers, I didn't want to worry her. I came home early so I could have the talk I needed. I didn't want to deal with this over the phone or over text message. My life changed in a lot of ways that day, as you might have expected given that I'm sharing this now. As I arrived at the driveway, I noticed that one of my business partner's gaudy, expensive vehicle was parked there, complete with his personalized license plate. This was very odd. When I used my phone to access our home security system, I discovered that it was in private mode and not recording. I made the decision to ignore it and drove away to our rural property in order to get my mind straight. Our security system is mostly for protection, and I hardly check it unless there's a specific cause. But I also find it relaxing to watch storms approach and to monitor the wildlife on the outside cams. I have a second video recorder set up for my personal amusement in order to store the material locally, which is inaccessible from my phone. I checked the second server and opened my laptop when I got to the country house to confirm what my gut was already telling me. As expected, Emily and James, my coworker, were in the living room, dancing, drinking wine, and then going upstairs to the bedroom. Since the microphone recorded their actions after they left the camera's field of view, it appears that they left the doors open. I wanted to know the truth because I only have a short time left, but I also didn't want the drama of a fight and divorce. I lost all the love and commitment I had for her that day, so feel free to call me a coward. I know it's not my fault, but I felt every feeling you could imagine. I've been a loyal, caring, and watchful wife. I'm now concentrating on who I am and what I value most. I spoke with my lawyer, and we went over my prenuptial agreement and will. After I gave him the rundown, we got to work figuring out how long and how much of this affair had been going on. We came to the disturbing conclusion that either I never really knew the woman I had been with for more than 20 years, or something had changed drastically in her. I'm not telling Emily or my kids anything right now. I have children from a prior relationship, but we never had children together. In order to give my kids and grandkids one final holiday memory with me, I'm going to put on a brave front and get through the holidays. In addition to trying to be a loving husband, I'll be the devoted father and grandfather. For those who are curious, Emily's affair partner, James, is a widower who hasn't been married again. I don't combine friendship and business, thus he is a business partner but not a personal friend. Jessica, the mother of my twins, made the decision to marry me, and at the time, I agreed that it was the appropriate one. When the children were 7 years old, Jessica, the mother of my children, wed a lovely man named Michael. Michael and Jessica never had kids together. I've been actively involved with the kids ever since I got my act together when they were 3 years old. At that point, I began to develop into the father I had always desired. Michael, Jessica, and I are all in our late 50s. James is in his early 50s, while Emily is about 55. Both Emily and I are in our first marriage. We were married when we were in our early 30s. Update. When the twins were born, Jessica, my ex, and I were still pretty young. Even though they came as a complete surprise, we made the most of it. I'm grateful for the life I've lived and the people I've loved as I approach my last days. They cherish these final times and keep my family near. All of the grandchildren are teenagers or older, and the twins are now in their 30s. Christmas is celebrated for 10 days every year. Christmas Eve to January 2nd is when we spend time at the farm. After everyone has arrived, we all gather to cut down a tree, then we cook, decorate, play games, and celebrate as a family. Since I purchased the property, Laura and her husband John have continued this custom. I'm still determined to keep my diagnosis a secret until after the year ends. Laura wouldn't be able to hide it if I told her, and I don't want to put John in a situation where he has to tell his wife a lie. I want the week to be enjoyable for the children and grandchildren. In a few weeks, we'll have plenty of time to prepare and grieve. In the long run, Emily's attendance this week will only be a small detail. To be honest, I don't give a damn about her nearly as much as I do about the other members of the family. It's an unusual financial scenario. After we were both financially and professionally established, Emily and I met and were married. She had 2 inheritances in a trust, a solid pension, and a good job. At her urging, we decided early on not to tell each other our full net worth. Additionally, at her request, we have a prenuptial agreement that states that any assets or trusts that existed before to the marriage, as well as any income derived from them, are not regarded as marital property. In addition to covering travel, food, and petrol, I also supplied both properties, housing, and utilities. She basically had my full backing, and she spent all of her money and resources on herself. She purchased cosmetic surgery, clothing, a car, and personal trips. She has proven to be pretty disagreeable on the inside, despite her stunning exterior. I announced my retirement from the organization where I worked a few days after receiving my diagnosis. Now that I knew, I saw that Emily was a little uneasy. Since I'd be around more frequently, I can guess why. My last day of work is tomorrow, after which I'll be concentrating on spending time with my family. I don't know if Emily and James have had any more activities, but I suppose they have since I provided my lawyer access to the camera server information and allowed him to use it from his office. I don't give a damn now. James is a huge letdown, and I'm aware of my identity and value. I am not as ostentatious as James. In the winter, I prefer wearing jeans, t-shirts, and coveralls, and I drive a 12-year-old pickup truck. I am positive that James is not quite as wealthy as Emily believes him to be. How can I tell? I receive quarterly financial reports because the trust has invested in his company. My accountants and I are the only ones who know how much I have. However, let's assume that over the past 28 years, the trust has been increasing. I lead a simple life and my great-great-grandchildren have enough money to enjoy the farm and receive an education. Emily's reckoning will come when she recognizes what she's lost. I simply won't live to witness it. December was a very busy month. These past 2 weekends, we went on our customary social rounds. James attended one of the gatherings. It was difficult not to watch him and Emily. They probably didn't notice. I found it easier to maintain my composure because I'm so busy finishing things at work. Emily hasn't said anything that would make me think she's aware that I'm aware. I still share a bed with her, something I'm not proud of. Recently, I've been self-centered with her. She seems to have been using me for the majority of this year, yet I still feel like I'm taking advantage of her. Many of you have portrayed myself as honorable, but I'm not. I detest this little bit of dishonesty. Emily won't get everything, so don't stress about it. The trust is well cared for. Thanks to your feedback, I've taken precautions in case I pass away suddenly or if my health deteriorates sooner than predicted. When necessary, I have also arranged for in-home care. I will not be cared for by Emily. The lawyer will let Laura, John, and the children know if I become incompetent, and Emily will not be allowed to see me. Important papers, jewelry, and other necessities have all been relocated to a safe place. I've finally started writing letters to Emily and every member of the family. These have proven more difficult than I thought. Update. The mission has been completed. I've made it to 2024 and we had a fantastic holiday week free of trouble. I apologize in advance, but I find that laughing about my illness helps me deal with it. Recently, I've seen that I'm acting a little selfishly. I just have a few updates because everyone left yesterday afternoon. My week with my family is something I should treasure, therefore I won't discuss it. This week's observations regarding Emily. I genuinely believe that this is the first time she has betrayed me. She looked to suffer from spending the entire week with all of us. It's funny how someone's behavior makes more sense when you know something about them. The fact that she kept her phone a secret and frequently left our family get-togethers to get some air. The nicest part was when one of the grandchildren requested to accompany mom when she had to run into town. She performed nearly ridiculous mental acrobatics to resist taking the grandchild. I must admit that I asked, why not? In order to play along. Thus the affair is still going on. Now that I'm retired, she has been inquiring about my daily or weekly plans. After telling her, I inquire about her plans. To tease her, I'll propose that we have lunch later this week because I'll be in the same vicinity. A cheater's worst adversary is uncertainty. I had a meeting with my lawyer this morning. I requested him to draft documents after making some decisions. I signed a new permanent will in place of my temporary one so it shouldn't need to be changed again. I had him draft divorce paperwork in anticipation of it all blowing out. She only receives 15% of our joint assets, such as furniture and housewares, according to the prenuptial agreement and the evidence of the affair. I maintain whatever I bought with my own money, including my retirement accounts and liquid assets. She must pay alimony if I insist on it. I have a folder including all of our evidence of the affair, which I have signed and am keeping in case I need it. By selling my debt to the trust, I gave the trustees permission to exchange it for stock in James's business. In relation to the trust, I have made a decision on its management. I'm going to drop one trustee. The 4 grandchildren will make up the remaining trusteeship, with the twins receiving the majority. John and Laura will serve as stand-ins for the grandchildren. The trusteeship will pass from Laura and John to each grandchild when they become 21. Laura receives the additional portion if any is left over. Next week, Laura, John, and the children will meet with me. I'll tell them everything I know. They will want to know why I'm doing this and will need to sign documents. My liquid assets, personal property, and the funds from James's loan will make up my personal value after this is over. In the worst situation, Emily's share of the trust's assets and worth will be minimal. I'll distribute the few personal belongings I wish to give to the children and grandchildren over the course of the upcoming weeks. My lawyer already has access to those in a secure area. A few of you made remarks on my health. I'm not resisting this, to be clear. I'm not experiencing any negative side effects from any treatments because I'm letting nature take its course. The family also observed that I was getting weary more readily. I dismissed it as simply growing older. The cough that started it all is still with me. My lung tumors were the cause of the diagnosis. I dismissed it as a persistent cough from a previous illness. When other problems start to surface, I anticipate things going south rather quickly, but by then, everyone will be aware. I want to be with the family as much as I can. With all of their various responsibilities, a big vacation would be difficult, which is why I found this week to be so crucial. It was the final time I could spend a lot of time with them all. We'll see, but I'm considering taking a quick trip for myself. I want to spend a day with every child and grandchild individually. That is my next objective. Update. The twins, Laura, John, my lawyer, and a notary came to my farm today. I finished the things I needed to, and this process has gone about as smoothly as it could have. The family is understandably upset. The tension in the room was evident when everyone came and saw my lawyer and the notary. I requested that they simply sit and listen to me, and then sign the documents once I was done. I would respond to all of their inquiries after signing the paperwork. Everyone is aware of the trust. I informed them that it was time for me to give them authority over the trust. I explained how crucial the trust had been to my life, why I had established it, and how we had decided to keep it apart from my marriage to Emily. Additionally, I included instructions on how I wanted the trust to be used and managed. We clarified that the twins and the grandchildren would share the trust, with Laura and John serving as stand-ins for the grandchildren until they are all 21 years old. They signed the forms and had them notarized, which demonstrated their confidence in me. Following that, copies were compiled, and I fired the notary and my attorney. I thanked them for coming out on a Sunday after seeing them out. As usual, they were both polite. They were all silent when I went back to the dining room, which was also being used as a conference room. The first person to break the hush was my daughter. It was not so much a question as a stream of thought. I began by talking about my health as soon as she paused. I described my diagnosis. I heard them planning how we were going to combat this. I stopped them right here. After outlining the likelihood and letting them know that I had already had a second opinion, I informed them of what you are all well aware. I will not be seeking treatment. I will allow nature to do its thing. We argued for the next hour or an hour and a half. Laura had to go fetch my daughter after she fled the room many times. My son John and I had a heart-to-heart while they were away. They can relate to my perspective. They understand, even if they disagree. Everyone agrees that once things settle down, Laura and my daughter will change their minds. When did I find out? That was the next question I knew was coming. I informed them. After that, there was more anguish and rage. I clarified that I was not a walking corpse and that I wanted one more holiday week. I was self-centered. After the holidays, I wanted my diagnosis to be made public. For the rest of their lives, I didn't want it to ruin their vacations. Sensing there was more, my daughter started investigating me. Until everything was out, she would not leave the room. Why in the world hadn't Emily told her, she asked. I dropped the final bombshell at that point. I explained to them what I had done in my initial post. For the first time, I could actually see my daughter's eyes blaze with rage. I then informed them that Emily is still unaware that I'm aware of it. I suppose you all prepared me effectively since I addressed the schemes and plans they had in mind, scenarios you all suggested, and I responded to the same questions. I assured them that I valued them far more than Emily in the end. I simply want to be at peace and not worry about Emily for the rest of my life. During the holiday week, I had to defend what I had done. They also pieced together her going outside to breathe and her decision to go into town without the grandchild. They were concerned that I was doing this by myself. I informed them that I have pals on social media that support me throughout my darkest moments. I still want this space for me, but I won't tell them where or how. They'll find out later. We've been discussing intermittently as a group for a few hours, and the emotions were pretty raw. However, I informed them that I had to return and discuss the trust. They are aware that the trust will be highly beneficial in preventing Emily from gaining access to my hard-earned money. She didn't attend this meeting because it protects them. Having stated that, I had to disclose the trust's finances. They all probably thought of the trust as a way to avoid paying taxes or as a way to safeguard assets in a marriage if the children are from a different woman. They weren't ready for me to give them the money. The audience became quiet as I began to review the balance sheets and assets. Then came the inevitable question. Why did you have this much after all those years of hard work? I gave them my personal financial theory, which they had heard a lot of times and had absorbed. However, I informed them that I had been living off the trust for years. I trusted them enough to send them to college. With that faith, I set aside time in my life for them. And because of that trust, I was able to work for a non-profit organization essentially for nothing. If I were to leave them and their kids with one example, it would be to utilize this trust to better the lives of others. Not simply to sometimes write a check to a charity, but to work for a cause they support. By educating others and fostering relationships, I've achieved far more in my years with this nonprofit than I ever could have with a check alone. I'm not pleased that I was responsible for so many positive and negative changes in everyone's lives around that table today. Although everything didn't go as planned, it's finished. They are fully aware of it. I pleaded with them to let me deal with Emily and to keep the trust a secret. For the time being, we'll maintain the status quo, but when I recover, things will be different. They all concurred. Over the course of the following few hours, we divided into smaller groups, spoke, cried, laughed, and prepared a supper. I expect the twins to return, but they all left an hour ago. I love my two in-laws very much, and I know they'll tell their spouses what's going on. That's just the way they are. I was aware that this was the last peaceful evening I would have. Even though I feel like a weight has been lifted, concern has taken its place. A brief update is provided. One of Emily's pals paid me a visit, which caught me off guard. Her name is Carol, and she is roughly Emily's age. Last week, she went out with Emily for a girls' night out. The girls actually spent the evening at Carol's place. If you have read my remarks, you are aware that Emily used a ride-sharing service and returned home pretty drunk last week. Emily and Carol have been friends for a long time, but I suppose that after more than 20 years of marriage, Emily has forgotten that I introduced them. My folks were friends with Carol's parents. I suppose Emily's instability has been exacerbated by my unpredictable behavior, and last week's girls' night was a tipping point for her. She became so drunk that she told Carol about her romance. Carol reportedly urged her to stop talking, but she persisted. She continued to provide more and more information, which infuriated Carol. Emily continued to lay forth an endless stream of details while attempting to explain her behavior in response to Carol's constant criticism. The following day, Carol contacted Emily. Emily apparently had no recollection of the previous evening. Carol summed up Emily's confession, but Emily denied having an affair outright, saying Carol was wrong and that she didn't say such things. Emily was told by Carol that she was full of lies, and she was given a week to come clean or else she would tell me directly. Carol paid me a visit over coffee since Emily said she had said nothing. Emily gave me a condensed version of her confession. I surprised Carol by informing her that I already knew, even though she anticipated me to be distraught. When Emily made this confession, I asked her if anyone else was present. The only other person in the house was Carol. If Carol had told anyone else, I inquired. She was angered by that. Before telling me, she assured me she wouldn't spread such a thing. I apologized and clarified that adding more people would make my preparations more difficult because I had my own schedule for handling Emily. Carol understood. As a favor, I begged her to keep it a secret from everyone and to give Emily the impression that she believed her. Carol felt the second section didn't feel right, but she did agree with my original request. I assured her that I would be all right and begged her to try. Carol stated I only needed to ask if I needed anything else. When Carol learns about my condition, I'll have to apologize again, but I'll take care of it another day. I will thus confront Emily tomorrow. I'm going to calmly tell her what I know about my condition and how I'm going to live the rest of my life without her on our regular date night tomorrow. I hope there won't be much drama because it's public. After dessert, I'm going to approach her. I'll tell her what I know and request that she not get in touch with my family or me. Let's see how it turns out. According to Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Yes, not all plans work out the way you had hoped, and mine is no exception. Allow me to lay out my plan for you. Emily and I usually go to the same restaurant for our weekly date night. We have a regular table because we have been visiting there for so long. It's at the back, away from the lively atmosphere beside the bar, but still open to the public. I made the decision to confront her here. After dessert, I intended to do it. I made accommodations for my lawyer and his spouse at the same time. Before we started, I paid the waiter, who has been serving us for years, for both of our meals. After I left, Carol was available to assist Emily. I intended to discuss our relationship as we finished the meal. After recording it, I intended to approach her, explain how I found out about the affair, let her know I was diagnosed, and lay out my future plan. I would write a letter to her requesting that she not come to the farm or get in touch with my family. They would witness the letter. Along with the divorce papers, I would hand her a briefcase full of supporting documentation before getting up and leaving. I thought she would keep quiet to preserve her social standing. Yes, I did videotape the exchange. She raved about our excellent teamwork and the wonderful relationship we had developed over the years. I questioned her about my treatment of her, whether I had ever mistreated her, etc. Certainly not, she said. I then questioned her about her infidelity. She claimed that although she was unaware of what Carol had told me, Carol was mistaken. I informed her that I knew before Carol did. Emily was obviously rattled at that point, and I believe everything she had prepared to respond to this talk vanished. Her face's color also changed. What? Was the only thing she could ask. She nodded in agreement when I requested her to give me some uninterrupted time to do this. Her once self-assured and arrogant demeanor changed to one of deer in the headlights. She was just able to nod. I described how after my doctor's appointment I hurried home to have the most challenging conversation with the one person I wanted to talk to. I clarified that I saw his car when I pulled up. After that, I noticed that the cameras were in privacy mode. I made the decision to visit the farm. She nearly cut me off when I reminded her that I still had film, but I simply raised my hand to remind her to wait. I informed her of my diagnosis and my intention to not battle the illness. I became enraged when I noticed the anguish in her eyes. How could she be sad about me? But I took a step ahead. The waiter came over to fetch my lawyer after I gave her a signal. Both of them arrived at our table. I was given a briefcase and a letter-containing folder by my lawyer. I informed Emily that when I left tonight, I didn't want her to get in touch with me or my family or visit the property. I asked the server to see me signing the letter. After that, the lawyer and server observed me hand Emily the letter. Then I brushed them off. Finally, I handed Emily the briefcase. I informed her that I knew a lot more than she had anticipated. I was completely ruined. I informed her that I had already signed the divorce papers, which she could sign to begin the divorce process. I informed her that I didn't think I would make it through a contentious divorce. She can remain at the house in town as long as I'm here, but I'll be at the farm. After tonight, I won't see her again. Excuses were not what I wanted to hear. I informed her that I had phoned Carol to assist her in getting home. Emily maintained her poise in public as usual. She simply said, "But," and I informed her that I was finished and heading out. The owner apologized for not alerting him, and I went to the server and left her a nice tip. I saw Carol and my son at the door as I was leaving. Carol smiled briefly as she walked past me, but her eyes were worried about Emily. I was driven to the property by his wife when my kid seized my truck. On Friday night, my son and his spouse stayed with me. At midnight, I eventually persuaded them to leave for home. I felt a lot of comfort when I went to sleep, but I also felt a fresh sense of loss. Nevertheless, I managed to complete the task at hand. On Saturday, the family stopped by the farm to check on me. It was a nice day, until Carol stopped by in the afternoon, but I felt a little pampered. She claimed that despite Emily's breakdown on Friday night, she spoke with her affair partner on Saturday. After the talk, Emily became aware that she was in a terrible position and that he was only using her. Carol made careful to let me know that although Emily didn't want her to get in touch with me, she believes that if I could have a brief conversation with her, it might give her the willpower to avoid me. Carol is skilled at phrasing her requests. I grudgingly consented to speak with Emily for 2 hours at the farm. Emily could pick someone to be there for her, and I would have someone there for me. It would be a polite discussion. I refused to be diminished, blamed, or the target of blame shifting. The meeting was intended to give her answers regarding the next steps. The waiter came over to fetch my lawyer after I gave her a signal. Both of them arrived at our table. I was given a briefcase and a letter-containing folder by my lawyer. I informed Emily that when I left tonight, I didn't want her to get in touch with me or my family or visit the property. I asked the server to see me signing the letter. After that, the lawyer and server observed me hand Emily the letter. Then I brushed them off. Finally, I handed Emily the briefcase. I informed her that I knew a lot more than she had anticipated. I was completely ruined. I informed her that I'd already signed the divorce papers, which she could sign to begin the divorce process. I informed her that I didn't think I would make it through a contentious divorce. She can remain at the house in town as long as I'm here, but I'll be at the farm. After tonight, I won't see her again. Excuses were not what I wanted to hear. I informed her that I had phoned Carol to assist her in getting home. Emily maintained her poise in public as usual. She simply said, "But," and I informed her that I was finished and heading out. The owner apologized for not alerting him, and I went to the server and left her a nice tip. I saw Carol and my son at the door as I was leaving. Carol smiled briefly as she walked past me, but her eyes were worried about Emily. I was driven to the property by his wife when my kid seized my truck. On Friday night, my son and his spouse stayed with me. At midnight, I eventually persuaded them to leave for home. I felt a lot of comfort when I went to sleep, but I also felt a fresh sense of loss. Nevertheless, I managed to complete the task at hand. On Saturday, the family stopped by the farm to check on me. It was a nice day, until Carol stopped by in the afternoon, but I felt a little pampered. She claimed that despite Emily's breakdown on Friday night, she spoke with her affair partner on Saturday. After the talk, Emily became aware that she was in a terrible position and that he was only using her. Carol made careful to let me know that although Emily didn't want her to get in touch with me, she believes that if I could have a brief conversation with her, it might give her the willpower to avoid me. Carol is skilled at phrasing her requests. I grudgingly consented to speak with Emily for 2 hours at the farm. Emily could pick someone to be there for her, and I would have someone there for me. It would be a polite discussion. I refused to be diminished, blamed, or the target of blame shifting. The meeting was intended to give her answers regarding the next steps. The meeting took place this morning. I don't know why, perhaps to limit the harm, but Emily picked Carol, and I went with my daughter. In order to prevent this from happening again, I wanted Emily to feel as comfortable as possible. I had a clear direction and aim going into the meeting. To get rid of Emily. The conference proceeded according to plan. Emily sought to downplay the affair while crying and apologizing. I refused to put up with it. I explained that she needed to come to terms with the fact that she would have a home to reside until my death. The trustees would make the decision regarding the house after my passing. I clarified that she would not get any money from my estate or the trust, but she would be okay since she has her trust and her 6-figure pension. "Why won't you fight for me or us?" she said, and I have to vent about it. "I just don't care about you or us anymore," was my response to her, even though I nearly lost my anger. She was kind of wrecked by that. This is where I vent my rage. This is what a self-centered cheater thinks. They only consider themselves. They believe they are valuable enough in the eyes of the person they have destroyed to be worth fighting for. Although she didn't want them in retrospect, she received the answers she requested. Another meeting is not something I want. I believe that holding more meetings only serves to divert my attention from my goals. After leaving with Emily, Carol returned a few hours later. I spoke with her briefly. The trustees reportedly informed the affair partner that they would be converting the loan into shares in his business, and since the trust will own the bulk of the shares, they are requesting a thorough forensic audit. With her MBA, my daughter isn't wasting any time. I suppose Emily recognized what I had already thought when she turned to him for solace. He was exploiting her to try to get her to buy the debt from me. I suspected he was up to something because of several casual remarks in the recordings. The affair partner now knows that I sold the debt to the trust after the paperwork was filed, and since Emily is no longer in my life, he can no longer utilize her. He informed her. It seems that Emily also told Carol that she would only have her pension income going forward because her trust had run out. Compared to me, she thought living with the affair partner was more glamorous. She genuinely believes that his wealth surpasses mine. While my husband played on his farm, drove an old truck, and we traveled economy class, he travels in first class, drives lovely cars, and dines at upscale restaurants. When he declared his unwavering love and desire to marry her, she was preparing to file for divorce. I find it disgusting that she is so shallow and greedy. Although I won't be able to see it, I anticipate that my family will inform her of my value when I pass away. I'm so relieved that her actual nature has come to light so that I can deal with her and protect my family. Then Carol surprised me by doing something very different. Since I'm no longer burdened, she advised me to call her if I need company. Why would she or any woman want to spend time with me given my diagnosis? I questioned her. Nothing long-term exists. She retorted that any divorced or widowed lady would be eager to spend what time she had left with me, even if Emily was naive and unaware of what she had. She claimed that I'm a great man and that she would treasure any time spent with me. She even made a joke about how many women would be lining up to call me, so she might as well be first in line. She replied, "But most people won't know Emily and I are separated. Emily doesn't want the social groups to know, but she and Laura will make sure her tale is heard," she added. Being courteous, I promised to inform her. She kissed me on the cheek and grinned. After she departed, I gave it some thinking, but I'm fairly certain that I don't want that hassle in my life at this time. These are the highlights, although I left a lot out. It has been a roller coaster, but I'm doing fine. I just need some quiet time for a few days. My condition and the dissolution of my marriage will soon be known to the social circles. There will be a never-ending flow of well wishes for me. I didn't want to be treated differently, but I knew I couldn't put it off indefinitely. But life happens as it does. Update. To start, I'm doing fine. I'm still above ground and warmer than normal. Being on my feet every day is a blessing. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable and my coughing has gotten a little worse. I see that it's getting easier for me to wind up. But all in all, this week has been fantastic. First, let's talk about Emily. She's disappeared. Her standing in the community has quickly and severely collapsed. She was respectfully asked to step down from all of her leadership positions after it was made public. She has been severely criticized by the majority of her circle, who have even asked her directly if she pursued their husbands. She has made several attempts to contact me, but I have not answered. I urged the individual to tell her that I had stated what I needed to say and that I knew what I needed to know, even if there were a few efforts made through proxies. It doesn't really matter to me if she needs closure. Why should her self-centered need for that concern me? She understands my feelings. I even shared some of the affair's specifics with her. At least 6 months have passed since it began. They traveled together 3 times. Once as newlyweds, once as a couple commemorating their 20th wedding anniversary, and once as a couple who met on vacation and stayed at the same hotel. Role-playing must have been an element of their relationship. She used our home because she felt at ease there and because it is tucked away from the road, making it impossible for onlookers to see the automobiles in the driveway. She even purchased a second vehicle for herself and kept it in a local parking garage. In order for no one to recognize her car when she traveled to the affair partner's residence, it seems that she switched cars. Perhaps in order to avoid me catching her, she was rather worried about how people in her social circle would perceive this. The amount of work she put into the affair is evident from her acts alone. All of these endeavors help me to firmly establish my feelings and my approach to handling the affair. I don't regret anything I've done. My unpredictable nature was only partially to blame for the inebriated revelation to Carol. It seems that he began to distance himself from Emily as soon as he received the news that I was selling the affair partner's debt to the trust. She must have gotten drunk and vented to Carol because she was under pressure to avoid being caught, and since her affair partner was no longer interested in her. You are aware of what follows. I think the affair partner's motivations for getting involved in the affair were very obvious. Emily is made even more pitiful by this, which in no way excuses her. The affair partner apparently needed Emily's assistance with his loan, while Emily desired a more opulent lifestyle with his wealth. It's fascinating how unattractive individuals are drawn to one another. We can find better mates if all of us nice folks just let the vile people get together. I apologize to those who strive on reconciliation out of dedication. It was not for me. My daughter's goals have angered the affair partner. In court, he seems to be attempting to stop her. More money is all he stands to lose. Rumor has it that he has attempted to gather funds from other investors in order to repay the loan, but sadly for him, word of his conduct has already begun to spread among my business associates. Do you recall that you should invest in people rather than businesses? Well, not many people are interested in investing in him. I'm not sure what my daughter has in store for his business, but she will put in a lot of effort to make sure it survives, just for the people who work there. I believe she is concerned that the partner in the affair may have something to conceal in the company's records. I hope it's something that can be fixed for the benefit of the staff. It has been wonderful spending time with family. This week, my family and I attended a high school basketball game. I organized a poker night as well, and it went really well. At the game were my son, my grandson, and a few old friends. The grandson witnessed how traditional men spent a night together, sitting around sharing stories. I'm hoping to add a couple more of these. This week, our family has eaten together 3 times. One evening, Carol did visit and bring food. I kept her at a distance as we conversed and ate. I'm still hesitant to let her in. Farm chores provide me comfort. I assist with equipment maintenance, check on the staff and animals, and occasionally drive the fences. I feel at ease knowing that this farm will remain in the family and continue to operate. I will always have a piece of myself. Many of my friends and acquaintances have paid me a visit. I believe this is what someone meant when they spoke of a living wake. I'm urging everyone to visit me outside. Even if it might be our last time together, I like spending time with these people. I was in the hospital for a few days, but I'm home now. I was taken to the emergency room after they discovered me breathing but unconscious. Despite my do not resuscitate order, I never passed away. I have always detested hospitals, and now that I have been diagnosed, I detest them much more. I don't wish to pass away there. I've spent some time at home. I'm unable to drive off the farm anymore. I'm determined to continue performing my duties and taking in the sunrise and sunset for as long as possible, even though they really don't want me to drive on the property. I also employ full-time home health aides, or babysitters as I refer to them, but I won't argue with the family about that. Basically, until I woke up in the hospital, I had no memory of anything. Carol and the majority of my family were present. By that point, I was stable, and the physicians only wanted to keep an eye on me for a day or two while, of course, doing more tests just to be sure. Carol, Laura, or my twins were with me nearly all the time. On one occasion, I woke up alone in my room with Emily by my side. She must have played the wife card on a duty nurse who was unaware that she should be denied entry. She was playing the kind and loyal wife, but I was exhausted. I have no idea why. I withdrew when I noticed she was caressing my head and holding my hand. She was wounded. She then began a new refrain in which she apologized profusely, claimed she was attempting to take advantage of him, and that she didn't mean anything she said to him. I did nothing but sit there. She was furious by this. She insisted that I speak with her. The nurse noticed her because she was just loud enough. Emily's behavior and my uneasiness were observed by the nurse. The nurse was slick. She wanted to do some checks, so she instructed Emily to wait outside. The nurse asked me whether I was all right when Emily left the room and the door was shut. I informed her that there should be notes stating Emily is not permitted because she was my ex-wife. After expressing regret, the nurse asked how she might help me feel less stressed. She should phone my emergency contacts, I asked. Carol and Laura, my daughter, entered the room after around 45 minutes. Emily had returned by that point and was still babbling, albeit quietly. Emily knew she had to go as soon as she saw them. I whispered to her to leave. She didn't deserve to cause a spectacle for any of the other patients. I told her to get over her self-centered thoughts and just go. She gave me a short peck on the forehead before leaving, which I really appreciate. For the sake of the other patient's peace, I backed down a little, but whatever. I received a lot of apology from the women in my life. Since they have their own lives, I can't really be angry with them. They all came up with a way to guarantee that I'm always accompanied. I'm never by myself in the house because they switch shifts. Carol and my daughter have been especially watchful. To keep an eye on who enters and exits the residence, they even built a security system. Even with all the craziness, I occasionally find some serenity by listening to the animals at dusk, seeing the sunset over the fields, and knowing that I've done everything I can to make things right before my time comes. I am appreciative of my family and friends' love and support. Emily's intrusion was distressing, but it strengthened my resolve to cut all ties with her. Now, I'm concentrating on the time I have left and creating memories with the people who are most important to me. To ensure that I would never be left alone again, they planned shifts. My daughter probably expressed her gratitude to the nurse for summoning them and her ire at the staff for allowing Emily to enter despite clear orders to the contrary. This incident just serves to highlight Emily's tendency to grasp at anything, much like a drowning person. She doesn't think I'm unique. She only views me as a tool to help her stay afloat. Every time I interact with Emily, I am struck by how much more sinister and evil her soul is. The partner in the affair is still just as much of a jackass as he was. In conversations with my daughter, his accounting department essentially provided her the full picture since they know where the wind is blowing. The affair partner has not engaged in any illegal activity related to his business. He was obviously abusing every benefit and legal loophole to boost his income over his base wage at the expense of the company's bottom line. He will be extremely irritated when my daughter assumes leadership because he will see a 60% decrease in the company's value to him. His flamboyant lifestyle is going to face a brick wall because I have a suspicion that she may simply terminate him and demote him to a silent minority owner position. Although he has threatened legal action, he has not yet taken any concrete steps. His reputation and credit are severely damaged, in my opinion. Carol is now a more enduring presence in my life. I must admit that I enjoy the company and friendship. Perhaps she is exhausting me. Several days a week, she has been staying over. I'm hoping to recover as quickly as possible, but I'll need to rely more on other people now that I can't drive. I have never been in this situation before. Carol has volunteered enthusiastically to help me in this area, and before you ask, no, we are only sitting next to one another. This evening, it's time to unwind and begin dinner. I want to thank everyone once more for their support. Your messages mean a lot to me, and I will make an effort to go back and reply to them all. Update. I regret to inform everyone that my father passed away last week. He asked me to give you your letter from him, among other things. You are aware that my time here is coming to an end if you are reading this letter. I made movies and wrote letters to every member of my family, as many of you suggested. That made me decide that I should write one last letter. To all of you, that letter is addressed. I want to express my gratitude to everyone for their suggestions and support. I have valued this brief period of life greatly, and my family will undoubtedly value it long after I am gone. That final Christmas week spent with my family was my last present to myself and to you. I would have had to turn to my family if I didn't have a place to vent and get support, which would have meant giving up on my objective. It may not be a present to my family now, but it will be in the future. The amount of fun I had creating those short flicks is beyond words. Thanks to all of you, my family will have another little piece of me. Without your advice and support, I never would have made any of those goofy little videos. To be honest, I never would have considered it. For all of you, I do have one request. My family will experience a range of emotions. I am aware that you all want a resolution, which is why I put my tale out there. Please refrain from making too many demands for updates and give my family time to grieve. I have requested that they provide you with this letter and, if possible, a final update on Emily. It is up to them to make that last update. Please be patient, everyone. Lastly, from the great beyond, I send you my best wishes and all the love I can provide. Keep in mind that nobody can guarantee tomorrow. Recognize the value of life and savor each moment. Treat yourself and those around you with kindness. I pray none of you have to follow in my father's footsteps, but if you do, know that I will do everything in my power to support you. Keep in mind that you are all really valuable. Nobody should ever tell you otherwise. From wherever I wind up, I'll give as many virtual hugs as I can. Thank you is all I have right now, yet it frequently feels so insufficient. I appreciate everything you've done. I hope that we will cross paths again in the hereafter, But not too soon. To be clear, I am the daughter of the individual who sent the letter in the last update, whom some of you believe to be my brother. In fact, it was me. I'm happy Dad left you all this letter so he could express his thoughts. In terms of Dad's death, he did not endure the same level of suffering as others who would have had his illness. I find solace in the fact that he passed away peacefully while he was sleeping. In keeping with his character, he had scheduled an autopsy in advance to make sure Emily couldn't use any aspect of his illness or demise to challenge his wishes. He had a knack for making plans for everything. I find comfort in the knowledge that there was some mercy at the end, even though it turns out that he died of a heart attack. He was cremated as he requested. While the remainder were scattered during the spring planting, some of his ashes were interred with a monument in an ancient farm cemetery. His desire to be a part of the land he loved so much was fulfilled. Emily wasn't there when we had the memorial on the farm. Security had been set up by the funeral home to make sure she couldn't go. For years, Dad had been trying to get us to move to the farm. When he retired, he even planned out home sites in the hopes that we would all move there. He had been made fun of, but we didn't take his suggestion seriously. In retrospect, I regret giving her such sway. My brother and his wife, along with my husband and I, will be relocating to the farm beginning this year. We have chosen a stunning location. At our insistence, Mom and Tom will move into Dad's home. We should all be closer together. It just feels right. Regarding Emily, witnessing her world fall apart has taught me what it really means to be a pariah. Her personality has entirely changed, and she appears to have aged 20 years in just a few months. She challenged the trust assignment and the will, but those issues were promptly settled, and she was unsuccessful. Although Dad had already given away the things he desired, she did receive their joint assets. The main problem was that she couldn't claim the house in town, which Dad had owned before they were married. She pleaded with us to give it to her. In one of the most fulfilling moments of my life, I promised her the house if she returned to using her maiden name as her last name. She accepted the offer even though the house is worth much less than the happiness she would get from removing her father's last name. I anticipate her selling the house and moving out. I don't really care, but I hope our partner has learned a valuable lesson in life. The company is in the process of rebuilding, and we have selected a new CEO. Carol received a single trust share. As Dad would have wished, we will look after her. Because of what she did for our dad, she has been a pillar of our family and will always be regarded as such. Our last update was in 2024. I am quite saddened by the fact that this will be the first year of my life without my father. I wanted to swing by and update everyone on the situation with my father's family. We celebrated our week-long holiday custom, which my father loved very much, as you are already aware. The week was excellent, if bittersweet. Dad was successful in uniting Carol and the rest of the family. We cherish her romantic, if you will, time spent with my father during his most trying times. He left one last gift for each of us, along with messages for the entire year. They moved us to tears and were so considerate. He gave Carol one final task, but I anticipate that there will be letters for the grandchildren at all of their significant occasions. The first occurred at a high school graduation last spring. This year, the home's construction is moving forward. I began to understand what Dad cherished about this farm, the seasons and the life cycles that exist here. I now have a better understanding of his choices from the previous year. Even while I still disagree with some things, I now have a greater understanding. Not as fervently as he did in the end, but it's just another barrier between us. I also began to observe the sunrises and sunsets at Dad's sites. Lisa has had a difficult existence. She had a stroke in the autumn. She survived since it was discovered in a timely manner. She is still undergoing rehabilitation in a care facility. Although she can now speak in a basic way, she still finds it difficult. She is still working on getting back to walking. She still has a long way to go. Her social circles have shown some sympathy for her health problems. Even the grandchildren of Mom, Tom and Dad have set aside their suffering to see her. I may never be a really philanthropic person. About the affair partner, I don't know a lot. He has vanished from my professional network. All I know is that a bankruptcy law firm did send an inquiry letter to the corporation. We haven't yet seen any formal filings. In terms of the business, it is profitable even without his financial support and direction. Every employee received a handsome bonus, and we controlled the debt. We are now closer because of Dad's last presence and his kind writings. By continuing to live on the farm and treasure the memories Dad left us, we continue to uphold his legacy. Every sunrise and sunset we witness from his favorite locations reflects his influence. In the place he cherished, his soul endures. I appreciate everyone's help along the way. My family sued me to give my house to my golden child brother. Later, they kidnapped my wife, claiming they were saving her from me. I've been harboring this grudge for years, and I'm not sure if I'm seeking guidance or if I simply need to vent. It's difficult to describe, but I suppose I've always known that my family didn't really love me, not in the manner that I should have. My brother, Ryan, is 17 years old and I'm the oldest sister, 24. 7 years is a great enough distance for us to never truly get along. To be honest, I believe that things began to go south as soon as he was born. I could tell as a child that he was the center of my parents' universe. I was just there, and he was their golden child. The more I think back on it, the more I see how messed up everything was. Even if I used to think maybe I was just being dramatic or hallucinating things. For instance, Ryan received a brand new PS5 with everything he could possibly want for Christmas last year. Me, I received socks. Walmart basic white socks, no joke. Even the socks themselves don't matter to me. I could live without them. The thing that bothers me though is that it was the only present I received. As Ryan devoured his presents like a ferocious animal, everyone was gathered around, grinning and laughing. The enthusiasm in the house was all for him. Then there was me, with a little packet of socks in my hand and a phony smile on my face as I was totally disregarded by everyone. What's crazy is that this wasn't an isolated incident. This was how my entire life was. My birthdays? Don't think about it. My family didn't even recognize my birthday until I was about 10 years old. They either forget or stop caring after that. My parents didn't even say happy birthday, so I celebrated my last birthday with college pals. Nothing. No text, no call. For Ryan's birthdays, however, they give it their best. My parents arranged a huge celebration for his 16th birthday last year. They hired a bouncy house, invited all of his friends and relatives, and even hired a magician or other entertainer. They had the entire event catered, and the house was decked out. Like the Super Bowl of birthdays, it was absurd. I wasn't even invited either. Yes, you read correctly. Even my own brother's birthday party did not extend an invitation to me. I only learned about it the day before, and when I brought it up to my parents, they dismissed it, claiming that I was too busy with school to want to attend. To be honest, I tried to forget the entire incident by going out with my friends that day. But even as we spent time together, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that I wasn't welcome in my own family. When my birthday arrived this year, it was the true kicker. Maybe, just maybe, they would at least recognize it, but I didn't anticipate anything. I've learned not to. Nothing. Once more, I spent the day with my college pals. Although it was enjoyable, the tiny celebration they organized for me in the dorms is not the same. Even if it's only a little, your family should enjoy your birthday with you. Every time Ryan turned 10, my parents transformed the house into a ludicrous pirate adventure theme complete with costumes and treasure hunts, reminding me of what I was missing. In the meantime, we enjoyed pizza for my 10th birthday. That was it. And I considered myself fortunate to receive that. The continual reminder that I'm not the favorite, that I never will be, is what hurts the most, not the presents or the parties. I've made a concerted effort to be a good son by doing all they asked of me, staying out of trouble, and getting good grades. However, none of that was important. Ryan has always been charming. He's gregarious, athletic, and everything I'm not. And my folks loved it. I recall being ecstatic to have a younger sibling when he was born. I assumed we would play video games together, be great friends, and hang around like the brothers in movies. However, I quickly discovered that Ryan also had no interest in me. He had all he could possibly want. His friends, his sports. I was merely present. I was the forgotten child. The fallback option. I became resentful of him as we grew older together. At first, I don't think it was his fault, but he began to recognize his authority. In the view of my parents, he could do no wrong. Guess who would be held accountable if we got into a fight? Me. Always me. My parents would simply laugh it off if he made a mistake, or they could even accuse me of not doing enough to assist him. I was always the villain, regardless of what he did. I recall Ryan lying about smashing the TV once. The TV was knocked off its stand as he and his friend were roughhousing. The object was all but broken. Ryan pointed directly at me when my parents got home and said I was the one who had knocked it over. Even if I wasn't at home, you know what? They took him seriously. They confiscated my phone, grounded me for a month, and pretended that I was a criminal. I basically gave up at that moment. In an attempt to escape from home, I began to isolate myself more and spent most of my time in my room or at friends' houses. However, each time I entered the house, it seemed like I was entering a never-ending reminder that I was unimportant. Ryan's room was filled with posters of his favorite sports teams and all the newest technology, whereas mine was tiny and claustrophobic. He seemed to have his own little empire, and I was just a nobody in the background. I will always remember my 18th birthday. I hoped that since I was growing up, they would do something special for me. However, no. It was just another day when I came downstairs that morning. Ryan was playing on his new Xbox, my dad was reading the paper, and my mom was working in the kitchen. No one spoke. Not even a happy birthday card or present. I seemed to be non-existent. I came to the realization that nothing would ever change at that point. Ryan had prevailed. He had stolen everything from me, including my parents' love and care. What's the worst? Most likely, he was unaware that he was doing it. Or perhaps he did, but he didn't give a damn. In any case, it wasn't just the typical sibling rivalry that made me loathe him. I'm referring to *hate*, the kind that keeps you up at night contemplating how much better your life would be without them. I realize it seems drastic, but that's my situation. Anger flares up inside of me every time I see Ryan's face. I no longer find it bearable to be in this family or to be near him. My parents always dismiss my attempts to express my feelings to them, claiming that I'm being theatrical or that I ought to treat Ryan with more consideration. However, why should I? When someone has taken everything from me, why should I be kind to them? I feel as though I'm caught in a never-ending circle of hatred and animosity, and the worst part is that I have no idea how to escape it. All I want is for myself to feel important and valuable. However, I will always be the second best in this family. From here, I have no idea where to go. Perhaps I should break things off with them. Perhaps I should go up to Ryan and tell him how much he has wounded me. Or perhaps I should just continue to separate myself from them and make an effort to live my life without them. I'm not sure. I just know that I can't continue to live this way. No more. My last post was a few years ago, and to be honest, I never imagined that I would return. I believed that the family trouble was behind me forever. However, the nightmare I thought I had escaped has suddenly become worse than I could have ever imagined, since life has a tendency of throwing curveballs. This is a lengthy and convoluted narrative, so buckle up. I took the necessary action after my last post. I cut off contact with my parents. How could I not? I was being tormented by the ongoing disregard and the obvious partiality shown to my younger brother Ryan. I decided to avoid making too much touch. As quickly as possible, I left my parents' house and moved in with a few college pals. To be honest, I felt as though a burden had been removed. Of course though, I still had to earn a living. Since I've always been skilled in graphic design, I began working as a freelancer on Fiverr. Initially, it was only to cover the expenses, but as I gained more customers and established a reputation, it grew into something more. I put in a lot of work, whether it was on the weekends or late at night. I refused to let my achievement be defined by how my family treated me. Then I met her, Megan, and it was incredible. She was intelligent, ambitious, and kind, everything I could have hoped for in a spouse. We clicked right away because she worked as a freelancer managing social media for small businesses. We began working together on projects, supporting one another's professional development. She was the first person, to be honest, who gave me the feeling that I wasn't invisible. She did see me, you know. And since she truly cared about me, she loved me for who I was, not for what I could do for her or out of duty. Our dreams grew as our jobs flourished. After a year or so of dating, we moved in together, and things continued to improve. Our crazy plan was to combine our savings and purchase a home. But we didn't want just any house, we wanted something unique. We searched for months before locating the ideal location, a huge 3-story suburban home. Our combined income allowed us to make it work, even though it was more than we ever imagined we could afford. We were overjoyed. This was something we created together, our dream. 3 days after we completed the transaction, we were formally homeowners. The real nightmare began at that point. My mother called me 3 days after we moved in. I wasn't even willing to pick up at first. Since I moved out, we hadn't spoken much, and the few times we had spoken, it had either been awkward or resulted in a fight. However, I responded for some reason. As if nothing had happened, she chirped, "Hey honey, we're in town and thought we'd stop by to see the new house." I ought to have been more aware. I should have sensed that something wasn't right. I told her they could come over though, even though I should have known better. I reasoned that it would be better to end the visit than to continue avoiding them. My dad, Ryan, and a woman I had never met before arrived at our front door a few hours later. This is where things start to become extremely strange. My younger brother Ryan, the beloved and golden child, wasn't by himself. The female companion? It turns out that was Karen, his fiancée. She was also expecting a child. Yes, you read correctly. Ryan would soon become a father. Nobody had bothered to inform me of my brother's engagement or the impending birth of a child. My first warning sign was that my father began using passive-aggressive language before he had even entered. "Whoa, you bought this house. Surprised you could afford something like this," he replied sarcastically, as if he had been demeaning me all along. However, I dismissed it. I didn't want to get into an argument. Not quite yet. The discomfort increased after they were inside. Megan sensed that something was wrong when my mom tried to strike up a conversation with her. She kept looking at me as if to ask, "What's going on?" At the same time, Karen was pacing the house as if she owned it, while my dad and Ryan were whispering to each other. Then suddenly, my father revealed shocking information. As patronizing as ever, he began, "We've been thinking. It would make sense for Ryan and Karen to move in here since they are starting a family and will need space for the baby." Not quite digesting what he had just said, I just gazed at him. "What? This house is much too large for you and Megan alone," my father went on, utterly disregarding my surprise. "A location like this would be very beneficial for Ryan and Karen as they raise their child. You don't need all this space." What I was hearing was unbelievable. I felt as though my own house was being gaslit. "Are you kidding me?" After giving me a direct look, my dad said something that made my blood boil. "No, we're serious. It's time for you to let your brother have what he needs and move aside. After all, he is establishing his own family and family comes first. You can find a smaller space with Megan. This house will work better for them." I went crazy. All of the years of animosity, disregard, and partiality suddenly surfaced. "Are you for real now? This home belongs to us. This place is in our names. Megan and I purchased it. Ryan knocked someone up, so you can't simply walk in here and declare he should have it." Ryan, appearing smug, tried to add something. "Dude, you don't really need all this room. Come on, we are parents. You are not." I yelled, "That's not the point. The idea is that just because you believe you have a right to something doesn't mean you can just take it. I'm tired of being ignored for you, even though I've done it my entire life." My dad became really combative at that point. In an attempt to frighten me, he stood up and puffed out his chest. "Watch what you say, boy. You should be appreciative that we're asking rather than merely telling you to give up the keys. Whether you like it or not, Ryan will own this house." I became enraged. I'm not sure what got to me, but I lost it. I shoved him back into the wall as I pounced at him. "Please leave my house immediately." I let out a yell. I was unable to stop Megan from yelling at us to stop. Anger that had been bottled up for years was erupting. After my dad pushed me back, we got into a full-on brawl, hurling punches and cursing at one another. Karen stood in the corner, frantically calling her phone while my mom and Ryan screamed. We didn't ultimately stop until the police arrived. I suppose that when things got out of control, Karen had phoned them. They took my dad and I apart, put us in handcuffs, and dragged us to the station. It was unbelievable to me that this was my reality as I sat in the holding cell. I was sitting in jail because my own father had attempted to take my house from my brother. A few hours later, Megan came to my rescue, but the damage was already done. My family was officially irreparably damaged. However, it didn't stop there. It grew worse, oh dear. In his unending brilliance, my father chose to sue me for the house. In fact, he attempted to sue me, saying that Ryan and Karen were more in need of the house than I was and that I ought to give it to them. I was stunned by its blatant insolence. Thus, we appeared in court. I prepared for the battle of my life by hiring a lawyer and gathering all the required paperwork to prove that the house was in my name. The truth is, though, I had something different planned. I wasn't going to overlook the trail that years of emotional and psychological abuse had left behind. I collected information from acquaintances who had witnessed my parents' treatment of me over the years, including emails, texts, and even eyewitness accounts. I took everything to court. In addition to asserting that the house belonged to me, my attorney claimed that I had spent the majority of my youth being neglected and emotionally abused. I had had enough of being the submissive, quiet son. It was time to defend ourselves. Months passed throughout the court case. My dad did everything he could to paint me as the villain. He portrayed himself as a devoted father who only wanted to act in his family's best interests. Ryan and Karen pretended to be the victims, saying that I was being self-centered for keeping the house and that they needed it for their child. However, none of it was successful. I felt as though a burden had been removed from my chest as the final verdict was rendered. In addition to finding in my favor, the judge mandated that my father compensate me for emotional and psychological abuse by awarding me $120,000. It was unbelievable to me. It felt like justice that someone had finally defended me for the first time in my life. I stopped communicating with Ryan and my parents following the court decision. The lies, the manipulation, and the unrelenting favoritism were all too much for me to handle. Having the house to ourselves at last allowed Megan and I to begin rebuilding our lives. However, the wounds caused by everything that transpired will never completely heal. I still find it hard to comprehend how far my parents went to defraud me, even as I write this. Ryan was the golden child, and I was merely an afterthought. But I suppose that's simply the way things have always been. However, it is no longer the case. About 3 years have passed since my previous update, and I wish I could tell that everything has been going well. I believe that everything had finally calmed down after the chaos caused by my dad attempting to take my house. I believed that I had permanently moved on from the family drama. If I've learned anything, it's that no matter how hard I try to keep my distance from my family, they will always want to pull me back into their toxic mess. Before I get into the recent horror, let me just provide some context. Megan and I were married 3 years ago. I can honestly say that it was the best choice I've ever made, and it was one of the happiest days of my life. After the litigation with my dad, I realized that Megan was the only person I could really rely on because she supported me through all the chaos with my family. Only a few of Megan's family members and close friends attended our tiny, private wedding. My brother, parents, and other family members were not invited. I didn't see the point after everything they had done to me, including the abuse, deception, and litigation. I owed them nothing, and I wasn't going to let their toxic conduct to spoil my wedding day. They discovered it, of course. I don't know how, but a few days after the wedding, my mom sent me a lengthy, guilt-tripping email expressing how disappointed they were not invited. I was okay with my dad not bothering to get in touch. However, it was my younger brother, Ryan, who lost it. I suppose I should have anticipated it. My parents had always gone out of their way to satisfy Ryan, who was known as the golden child. He never accepted accountability for anything in his life, and he always placed the blame for his errors on someone else. The financial status of my parents suffered when the court decided in my favor and mandated that my dad pay me $120,000. They weren't in financial distress or anything, but their standard of living had decreased. Being the pampered brat that he is, Ryan was unable to cope. I suppose that was the beginning of the end for him because he didn't get the house he believed he was entitled to and his father had to pay a hefty sum of money. A few months after the court case, his fiancée, Karen, broke up with him. She took the kid and returned to living with her parents, based on rumors I heard. Although I never heard the whole story, I'm positive that Ryan's inability to cope with the strain was the reason. I can help with it. He believed that I was to blame for everything, including my dad's legal defeat, their financial difficulties, and Karen's departure from him. Things took a very bad turn at that point. About a month has passed since my wedding. As we continued to adjust to our new life together, Megan and I were relishing the tranquility that came with finally escaping the toxic hold of my family. I made the decision to take a stroll around the neighborhood one afternoon. Sometimes I like to take a stroll around the peaceful streets and breathe in the fresh air to decompress. At least it should have been a typical day. I spotted Ryan halfway down the block. He was standing on the street corner, looking at me with a look of unadulterated anger in his eyes. Uncertain if I was seeing things, I froze for a moment. I didn't know why he was in my area, and we hadn't spoken in years. "Ryan!" Confused, I called out. "What the hell are you doing here?" He charged at me before I could even comprehend what was happening. He was also not without anything. He was holding an iron rod that looked like it had been torn off a building site. "What the, Ryan?" I yelled, attempting to retreat, but he moved too quickly. With all of his strength, he swung the rod, and before I could react, it struck my side. Instantaneous, the pain shot through my ribs like a flame. Gasping for air, I sat down, but Ryan wasn't finished. He lowered the rod once more, aiming for my legs this time. When it struck my left shin, I heard the horrible snap and fell hard, landing on the sidewalk. "You ruined my life." Ryan's voice cracked with rage as he screamed, "You are solely to blame. Everything is ruined because of you, including the fact that Dad went bankrupt and Karen left me." To protect myself, I attempted to stand up, but my body refused to obey. Every nerve in my body felt like it was on fire from the excruciating pain. Ryan raised the iron rod once more as he stood over me, his face contorted in rage. Knowing what was going to happen, I prepared myself, but I was immobile. I had no power at all. My right arm took the following blow, and I felt the force cause my bone to break. Time seemed to slow down. The world around me grew hazy and muffled, like if I were underwater, and my vision went blurry. I lay there waiting for the next strike, wondering if this was how it was going to end, unable to even scream. I'm not sure how long the attack went on, but eventually I heard voices, far away at first, then getting louder. I could hear footsteps running toward me and shouting. I was too far gone to comprehend what was happening when I saw someone take Ryan and pull him away from me. I lost consciousness. I was in the hospital when I woke up. Megan was seated by my bedside, her eyes puffy and red from sobbing, her face pallid. My throat was dry and every muscle in my body ached as I tried to speak. Megan squeezed my hand and said, "You're okay. You'll be all right." However, I wasn't feeling well. My right arm, left leg and ribs were all fractured. I was fortunate to be alive, the doctor stated. Ryan might have murdered me if the spectators hadn't stepped in at the right moment. To stop him, the police had to be called. As I lay bleeding on the sidewalk, Ryan was immediately hauled into custody and placed in handcuffs. The next few days were a haze. As my body gradually started to mend, the painkillers kept me sedated and I was in and out of consciousness. Megan refused to leave my side and remained by my side the whole time. She took care of everything, including hiring a lawyer to handle the impending court case, handling the insurance, and handling the police reports. Because a trial was indeed imminent. Ryan was facing severe jail time due to the severity of my injuries after being charged with assault with a deadly weapon. Megan gave me the specifics when I was at last clear enough to comprehend what was going on. Since Karen had left him, Ryan had gone absolutely insane. He fell into a severe despair, yet he blamed me for his shortcomings rather than owning up to his own shortcomings. The police report states that Ryan admitted to them that he had been plotting the attack for hours while waiting outside my residence. He brought the iron rod he had stolen from a building site close to his flat. The worst part though, he had absolutely no regrets about it. He told the police that I had destroyed his life, that he deserved to punish me and that he was only receiving justice for my actions. He genuinely thought that I was to blame for everything, including our dad's financial difficulties and his fiancée's departure. I was in the hospital for weeks to heal from the fractures. Physical rehabilitation, innumerable testing, and the impending court case were all new forms of agony every day. I was unable to walk for about a month, and even after I was released from the hospital, I spent weeks on crutches and wearing a cast on my arm. According to the physicians, I might not fully recover my left leg's mobility for months, and even then, it might never return. A few months later, the trial got underway. Naturally, Ryan entered a not guilty plea. He believed that I was the one who drove him over the line, and that his actions were justifiable. His attorney attempted to claim that he was in the wrong frame of mind due to all that had transpired with our family and that he had acted out of emotional anguish. However, the proof was incriminating. Several others who saw Ryan assaulting me were eyewitnesses, and they stepped in and contacted the police. The police report unequivocally demonstrated that Ryan had premeditated the attack, and the prosecution had medical papers outlining my injuries. There was no doubt that he had come to my house with the intention of hurting me. One of the most difficult things I have ever had to do is sit in that courtroom and watch my brother attempt to defend what he did to me. Throughout the trial, he didn't even glance at me. It seemed as though he no longer recognized me. The worst part though, it was my parents, not me, who came to support him. They nodded as if they agreed with every word he said while they sat on his side of the courtroom and listened to him spew lies about how I had ruined his life. It felt like being stabbed in the stomach. They still selected him despite everything they had done to me and everything he had done to me. They continued to think that he was the victim in this whole situation. The decision was obvious from the beginning of the trial, which lasted for a few weeks. Ryan received a 5-year prison sentence after being convicted guilty of aggravated assault. After 3, he will be eligible for parole, but to be honest, I don't give a damn anymore. I've come to terms with the idea that I no longer have a family. Not a biological one anyhow. Throughout everything, Megan has been my pillar of support. She is the one person who has supported me through difficult times without faltering. Moving on and achieving both physical and mental healing have been our main priorities. I've been attending therapy in an attempt to handle the trauma of what transpired, but it's taking a while. I feel like I'm finally making progress on certain days, although other days are better than others. On other days, I feel like a shattered, empty replica of the person I used to be, and I can't even look in the mirror. I will never allow my family to harm me again, though. I'm finished with them altogether. Thank you for reading if you have gotten this far. For now, I'm just attempting to live each day as it comes, without knowing what the future will bring. Although there will never be a perfect life, at least I now know who I can trust, and that is more valuable than any family could ever be. My parents perpetrated the most outrageous prank yet, right when I thought I had heard the last of them. About 6 months had passed since Ryan's sentencing. At last, things were beginning to return to normal for Megan and me. We were even discussing creating a family of our own, the nightmares had subsided, and I was improving in therapy. Until last week, things were gradually improving. I was to have lunch with Megan at a cafe close to her workplace. We did it frequently as a way to spend time together and break up the workday. However, she failed to appear that day. I waited at first, thinking perhaps she was simply running late. I called her phone and texted her, but to no avail. My heart began to race. Even if she's only saying she's stopped in traffic, Megan always responds and is never late. A feeling of icy fear crept over me, as if something terrible had happened. When I called her office, they informed me that she had left on schedule. Panic struck. I started driving around the neighborhood since I had no idea what to do and thought maybe she had been in an accident or her phone had died. I received a call from a blocked number at that point. I initially believed it to be a hoax, but I felt compelled to respond. The next thing I heard chilled my blood, therefore I'm glad I did. My mother's voice, which was simultaneously chilly and sickly sweet, said over the phone, "Your wife is with us. We're taking her to a safe place where you can't harm her anymore." My heart stopped beating. "What the?" I yelled, nearly causing the car to crash. "What on earth are you discussing? Where is Megan? What did you do?" My dad's voice interrupted. "She's with us now. You have twisted her against her family and poisoned her mind. We're acting in her best interests. We're bringing her away from you to a place where she can think rationally." What I was hearing was unbelievable. My wife had been abducted by my own parents. In their perverted story, they honestly thought I was a villain, and now they were stealing Megan, my true love, in the hopes of rescuing her from me. I told them, "I swear to God, I'm calling the police if you don't bring her back right now." I'm not sure how I was able to remain composed. My father genuinely chuckled. "Do you believe that we fear the police? You are not her family. We are. She would prefer not to have you around." Never in my life had I been so blindly angry. I quickly contacted the police after hanging up. I was going crazy while I waited for them to track down the call. I kept thinking about what they were doing to her and where they may take her. It seemed like an eternity as the hours went by. At long last the police called me. Megan had been located. She had been brought to a dilapidated motel on the outskirts of town by my parents. They were trying to deprogram her by keeping her isolated in a room and telling her to leave me and return to the family. Being the fierce woman that she is, Megan had already escaped the room and fled to the lobby of the motel, where she pleaded with the clerk to call the police. She was safe when the police arrived, and my parents were immediately taken into custody. They face many charges, including wrongful imprisonment and kidnapping. I genuinely don't care what will happen to them now, but I don't know. Personally, I don't think they're alive. It doesn't matter what false beliefs they may have had or what excuse they may have given themselves for their behavior. I will never forgive them for attempting to take away the one person who is extremely important to me. The only thing that matters is that Megan is safe now. However, I will always remember my mother's voice when she stated that they were acting for her own good. They seemed to be living in another reality where I was the antagonist and they were the heroes. I have no idea what the future will bring, but I know that I will never again be with them. It's time to at last, genuinely move on. Caught my wife cheating, moved on, and found new love, until my ex tried to run over me and my new girlfriend in a jealous rage. I've been a lurker on Reddit for a while, but today I finally have a story to tell. Since my life has been so chaotic, I haven't had time to write about it, let alone breathe, even though I've wanted to post this for months. I can now talk about what occurred to me now that everything has been resolved, and perhaps it will assist someone else avoid a similar circumstance. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm a 36-year-old man who married a 35-year-old woman named Carolyn for what I believe to be eternity. In the end, I will never be able to reclaim those 6 years of my life. At least I kept telling myself that our marriage wasn't awful. When we connected on Instagram, I truly believed I had struck gold. She seemed ideal, humorous, and beautiful. My early years were quite chaotic, so I was especially alert for warning signs. My dad was the victim of severe abuse from my mom, who would yell matches at 3 in the morning, throw plates all over the room, and basically take everything because he loved us and didn't want to leave. You can know that when I was dating Carolyn, I was constantly on guard. I spent 2 years scrutinizing every aspect of her life, including how she handled money, stress, and waiters, basically, everything you should look for before committing to someone. To be completely honest, she aced every test. She was compassionate, tolerant, and giving, qualities my mother lacked. I believed I had done my research, thoroughly examined her, and discovered a decent woman. I even recall telling my closest friend that I had finally ended my family's abusive cycle. I was mistaken about that one, man. But I'll talk about that later. We got married in a gorgeous ceremony, purchased a charming suburban home, and began what I hoped would be our happily ever after. I had no idea that I was about to enter a nightmare, albeit a distinct one from the one I had known growing up. About 2 years in, everything started to go south. I mean extremely south. Every month, like clockwork, we had huge blowout fights instead of being the couple everyone envied. It was also constantly over the most ridiculous stuff, like the dishes in the sink, my late work, her hanging out with her friends, or even the TV shows we watched. I really thought we could work things out, so I was working so hard to keep our marriage intact. This was the woman who would surprise me with weekend excursions and leave small messages in my lunchbox. How we had gone from that to her yelling at me because I had purchased the incorrect brand of coffee was beyond me. I recommended couples therapy because I'm the kind of man who thinks things should be fixed rather than thrown away. In fact, I pleaded for it. We attended exactly one session, and holy hell, what a fiasco that proved to be. Carolyn replied, "It's your idea, so it's your expense." So I selected a really competent therapist who specialized in married couples, scheduled all the meetings, and even paid for it out of my own pocket. The therapist began highlighting some communication problems and raising the possibility that Carolyn wasn't managing conflict in a healthy way. She cried uncontrollably, said the therapist was assaulting her, and vowed never to return. I was attempting to make her look crazy, she continued, calling the therapist a quack. I later learned that her father had passed away just before our arguments became increasingly heated. Grief does strange things to people, so I tried to be understanding, but she refused to talk about it, refused to receive assistance, and continued to get angrier and more aloof. Her yelling battles could wake up the entire neighborhood, but she never got physical or broke anything. On one occasion, our neighbors believed someone was being murdered and phoned the police. Carolyn was shouting at me because I had neglected to get her dry cleaners. We eventually settled into this strange pattern in which we essentially just shared a room and occasionally had sex. We would get up, leave for work, return home, have dinner while watching television, and then retire to bed. Repeat after rinsing. We hardly spoke anymore, which is the only reason the fights decreased in frequency. But I was still foolishly in love with her. That's sad, isn't it? I kept reminiscing about our early years, telling myself that we could return there with enough effort. I firmly believed in the for better or worse part of our marriage vows. I suppose I overlooked the fact that those vows also included forsaking all others. I'll get to that part though. I was brought up to believe that marriage is holy, so perhaps I should have recognized the warning signs. You stick it out and work on it unless someone is being hit or cheated on. It turns out that I was unaware of one of those deal breakers that was about to happen. Allow me to explain how everything went wrong. I work at this dull corporate job, nothing special, just your average mid-level job, pushing papers and going to meetings all day. The kind where you're not important enough to fly first class, but you're important enough to travel. I had been dispatched to a business expo in a different state, where I was expected to spend 4 days networking with potential clients and acting as though I was interested in PowerPoint presentations. My life chose to take a huge turn for the worse at this point. Our firm back home experienced a serious issue 3 days into the expo, something involving servers crashing and losing customer data, the usual corporate emergency fare. Everyone was called back early by my supervisor. I quickly reserved the first trip home because I'm the devoted worker that I am, or perhaps I'm just a fool, you decide. I was thinking of this lovely, dumb concept. Do you remember the romantic reunions in films where the husband surprised his wife? Yes, I did believe that would occur. I planned this surprise during my whole Uber trip from the airport. I stopped at a posh florist and spent $80 on her favorite flowers, which were pricey purple orchids that she always said brought back memories of our first date. I even got her some champagne and some of her favorite high-end chocolates. I believed that this might be a new beginning for us. I thought that this impromptu gesture would remind her of the reasons she fell in love with me in the first place, since we had been acting so distant lately. With my chocolates and flowers, I felt like the greatest husband in the world when I arrived home at 2 p.m. Her car was in the driveway, which made sense because she worked from home on Thursdays, and the house appeared to be typical. However, I recall a few strange things, such as her favorite playlist playing from upstairs, which she only ever listened to when she was feeling particularly upbeat. Though I assumed she had a buddy over for lunch or something, there were 2 wine glasses in the sink. God, I was such a fool. I was so eager to surprise her that I went right upstairs to our bedroom. Although I could hear other sounds and the music was growing louder, my brain was not comprehending what they meant. Do you remember the scene in horror films where everyone yells at the character to keep the door closed? That character was me. My world fell apart when I pulled open the door to my own bedroom and turned the doorknob. That 1 second turned every single pleasant memory, trusting moment, and I love you into ash. I will never be able to forget what I witnessed in that bedroom until the day I die. Beneath some strange guy in our bed was my wife, the person I had loved, supported and built a life with for 6 years. The same bed where I had hugged her after her father passed away, and where we had discussed having children in the future. She was acting as though I didn't exist and that our marriage meant nothing at all, not even attempting to keep quiet about it. As I stood there, a total moron, watching the flowers I had purchased fall to the ground and scurry like cockroaches when the lights are turned on. The man had the audacity to try to scurry past me like I was a doorman, and I will never forget this. I lost it while he was fumbling to put on his clothing and strewing things all over the place. Something inside of me shattered, perhaps because I saw him with my wife or because he believed he could simply walk away from ruining my marriage. My hand was around his throat before I even realized what I was doing. It wasn't a death grip, but it was a clear signal that he wasn't simply leaving. Instead of hitting him as you might think, I gave him 2 open-handed slaps across his face, resembling a dramatic housewife from a soap show. I'm still baffled as to why I didn't just punch him instead. After I caught him with my wife, the man's expression quickly changed from one of fear to one of rage, as if he were truly going to try to fight me in my own home. Can you fathom the sheer disdain and the audacity? He probably fed him stories about being single or separated, so I'm willing to wager he was unaware that Carolyn was married. He most likely believed that I was some sort of insane ex-boyfriend. I released him before the situation worsened, not because I was afraid, but because I immediately saw that this pitiful excuse of a man wasn't worth being charged with assault. It wasn't he who promised me anything. He didn't make a vow to love and care for me till the day we die. He was just another man who was unable to control himself. The true traitor was still in that bedroom, most likely considering how to deceive her way out of this situation. My entire body trembled as I turned back to Carolyn. The lady I had dedicated my entire life to for 6 years was there, fumbling with her bra as if it were a trivial annoyance. The purple orchids I had purchased were all over the floor, most likely crushed beneath the man's running feet. She said the mirror had better lighting, so I hung it up for her last Christmas, and I just stood there watching her get ready in it. She was also taking her sweet time, as if she hadn't just ruined our entire marriage. She was avoiding my gaze in the mirror, straightening her hair nonchalantly, and behaving as though she hadn't just ruined everything we had worked so hard to create. You want to know what this woman had the audacity to say to me after I literally caught her cheating? As if I were a door-to-door salesperson who had disturbed her day, she gave me this irritated look and asked, "Why are you even back?" Nada, I'm sorry, I can explain, or any of that nonsense about fundamental human decency. The fact that I came home early and caught her cheating, in our bed, in the house we bought together, the house where I paid the majority of the mortgage, actually annoyed her. Never in my life have I wanted to strike someone so much. In reality, my hand was twitching as I recalled how satisfying it was to slap her affair partner, but I just stood there, immobilized, while she had the audacity to mutter under her breath, "You weren't supposed to be back," as if I were to blame for her early return home or that I should have called ahead to arrange a convenient time to catch her cheating. This woman's sheer outrageousness, 6 years of marriage, and this is what it meant to her. A small hiccup in her fun-filled afternoon. Do you realize what's truly broken? While all of this was going on, I could see our wedding picture on the nightstand. The same bedside table where she had placed the breakfast I had prepared for her the previous weekend. She had been telling me she was too tired for sex in the same room for the previous 3 months, but she obviously had plenty of energy for this stranger. Like a fool, I stood there thinking about all the late nights at work she had told me about, all the girls' nights out, and all the times she had mentioned going to see her mother. What was the duration of this? How many men had shared my bed with me? Carolyn was by no means finished talking, so I was about to find out. Then this woman, this nasty jerk, went totally crazy. As though I had just blown apart our marriage, she began yelling at me. "You weren't expected to return," she screamed, her face turning red and splotchy, just like when we fought. "You are to blame for this. You wouldn't have seen this if you had simply informed me that you were returning home." This woman would have earned an Olympic gold medal for her mental gymnastics. She even had the audacity to accuse me of being the one who discovered her infidelity. "But hold on, things will improve. You declined my request for an open relationship," she screamed, as if it somehow justified her actions. Yes, 6 months prior, she had asked me once in a drunken chat, and I had declined since I was a monogamist. Apparently, that meant she should do it anyhow, in her deranged thinking. "I have necessities," She continued to rant, as if I were a monster for asking my wife to be obedient. She attempted to cheat on me *nicely*, which is really insane. I tried to do things without hurting you. How thoughtful of her. Something broke inside of me. 6 years of devotion, trust and love were reduced to I have needs. Every kiss, I love you, and moment we spent together were all phony. My palm trembling with anger, I took 3 steps across the room. I lifted my fist and grabbed her by the collar of the shirt I had purchased for her birthday last month. She injured me, and I wanted to hurt her too. Anything that matched the agony ripping through my chest was what I wanted her to feel. However, I couldn't do it after seeing the dread in her eyes, real, authentic fear, despite the fact that she had just shattered everything I held dear and had shown me that our entire marriage was a sham. That's not me. I'm not going to be that man. I vowed never to put that expression on anyone's face, and my mom used to stare at my dad with the same terror. So with my hands still clenched but lowered, I moved back and released a go of her shirt. To let her feel even a small portion of my suffering, the dark side of me still wishes I'd given in to that anger. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I deserved better than to become what I've always feared. I'm glad I didn't. There I was, standing in my own bedroom, looking at this stranger in my wife's face while surrounded by crushed purple flowers. This was how our 6-year marriage ended, with her accusing me of being the one who discovered her infidelity. Standing there now was the woman who used to kiss me goodbye every morning, accusing me of failing to phone ahead to arrange for my discovery of her affair. This woman changed identities faster than a TV station the moment I released her top. She was suddenly no longer afraid. No, in all of this, she was now the victim. Really, you were going to hit me? As I turned to leave, she yelled at my back. This is the precise reason I no longer love you. You're not a man at all. She continued to speak, yelling every possible abuse as she followed me down the corridor. After 6 years of marriage, she was attempting to make me the antagonist in this tale. It was very convenient for her to go from shivering in terror to yelling abuse at the man she had just accused of hitting her. I didn't realize she wanted me to strike her until I spoke with my friend later that evening. Do you think that's possible? In order to transform herself from the unfaithful wife into the mistreated husband, she wanted me to lose my cool and give her something she could use against me. She most likely had it all figured out. She would cry about her violent husband, run to the police with a battered face, and take half of my belongings and my monthly alimony payments. I was being lured into domestic violence by the same woman who used to bring me soup when I was ill. In a weird way, the manipulation was almost impressive. I needed to leave that house. It practically smelled of treachery throughout the entire area. In our bedroom, on our linens, and in the air, their colognes and fragrances were blended together. The aroma of another guy had contaminated the same bed where I had comforted her during panic attacks. I took my keys and money and went for a drive. I found myself at my friend Mark's house. I'm grateful for Mark. After glancing at my face, he pulled out the whiskey. Mark understood precisely what I was getting into because he had already been divorced. He said it like it was. I had to get a lawyer as soon as possible. Here's the worst part though. Carolyn was working part-time at a boutique, essentially pretending to have a profession, while I was earning 6 figures. That meant I might have to pay this dishonest woman alimony in my state. Every month the same lady who had just slept with another man might deplete my finances. That's the weird thing about the legal system, even if you are the one who is cheated on, you still have to pay for it. However, Mark, being the astute jerk that he is, pointed out that adultery might alter the alimony figures. Keep a record of everything, he advised. Every email, text message, and receipt. Anything that would show she was cheating on you. In this program, there is finally some good news. Perhaps I won't have to pay for her affair partner's dates after all. My mind was still racing. I had been a contented husband and father organizing a surprise for my wife just that morning. I was now sitting in my friend's living room, searching for divorce attorneys on Google while attempting to keep my stomach from turning up whenever I thought about what I had just entered. I had no intention of attempting to mend our relationship in any way. I could be foolish enough to purchase pricey flowers for a wife who cheats, but I'm not foolish enough to overlook it. My phone started exploding when I was sitting at Mark's apartment, trying to take it all in. Carolyn allegedly made the decision to try to tear me down via text messaging because she couldn't control me in person. And holy, the things this woman sent me are unbelievable. Just last week, this woman texted me "I love you," with adorable little heart emojis. She was now providing me in-depth analyses that contrasted her affair partner's manhood with mine. In fact, she took the effort to explicitly describe in writing how much more effective he was in bed than I was. How I could never please her the way he could. How she had spent years pretending to be with me. Like she was writing a Yelp review for a lousy restaurant. She gave me an entire stinking novel detailing all of my sexual shortcomings, along with performance assessments and size measurements. After I caught her cheating in our own bed, she even had the audacity to tell me that her boyfriend had ruined her for other men, as if I would want her back. The best thing though. She was furious that I had destroyed her good thing. Do you think that's possible? As if I should have given them solitude or something, she was upset with me for interfering with her affair. She accused me of being selfish since I had ruined her chance at true happiness by returning home early without telling her. This woman was performing mental acrobatics that would have pleased Olympic judges. I'm glad Mark was there because he told me right away to take screenshots of everything. He kept shouting, "Document, document, document." And he was absolutely correct. I saw those tiny message bubbles begin to go away, one by one, not even a minute after she had finished her big tirade about her fantastic affair partner and my alleged flaws. I suppose she finally understood that when your husband earns 3 times as much as you do and a divorce is imminent, it might not be the best idea to write down your admission of infidelity. She resorted to using the same old slurs after erasing all the proof of her affair. She called me all the names in the book, but she made sure to keep her afternoon actions out of the conversation. The speed at which she shifted from boasting about her affair to acting as though it never happened was actually rather astounding. It was like witnessing someone attempt to remove evidence from a murder scene as those texts vanished in real time. Unfortunately, she was unaware that I had screenshots of every single item. She may have erased the texts, but she was unable to erase the truth or the images of them that were now securely saved in the camera roll of my phone, ready to prove to a divorce judge why I shouldn't be required to pay this lady any alimony at all. That evening, Mark proved to be a wealth of information regarding divorce. He guided me through every step I needed to take, from gathering proof to protecting my financial accounts, in between shots of whiskey. That night, I hardly slept at all, just mentally reliving everything while I browsed through my phone's evaluations of divorce attorneys. The 2 weeks that followed were a haze of meetings with various lawyers. Some appeared to have barely passed the legal exam, while others sought retainers that were more expensive than my automobile. Finally, I came across Lucas, who didn't need me to sell a kidney to pay him and who seemed to genuinely care about my issue. Lucas really grinned when I showed him the screenshots of Carolyn's texting tantrum and the photos of the condition of our bedroom. Although he was pragmatic, he acknowledged that we had a strong case to reduce or possibly do away with alimony. He cautioned me that regardless of the reason for the dissolution of the marriage, judges in our state have a tendency to favor the lower-earning spouse. Nevertheless, he pledged to fight for me until the death. To be honest, the first positive development since this horror began was simply having someone knowledgeable and supportive in my corner. Serving Carolyn with divorce papers was the exciting part that followed. Are you curious about what this woman did? For 3 weeks, she avoided the server by altering her schedule, acting as though she wasn't home, and even having her mother inform the server that she had relocated to Florida. She had likely not exercised honestly for months when the server finally caught her leaving a yoga session. She took the entire 30 days permitted by law to reply, even at that point. A move of pure hatred. She was aware that I was paying Lucas by the hour, so she knew precisely what she was doing, dragging everything out as long as possible. And Carolyn became the queen of petty once the proceedings really got underway. She claimed she couldn't locate bank statements that I knew she had, forgot to bring necessary paperwork to meetings, was late for every appointment and insisted on thorough inventory of every item in the house, down to the last spoon. These absurd settlement offers kept coming in from her lawyer. In addition to wanting my 401k in the house, she also wanted alimony. This woman, whom I found cheating on, asked for half of my retirement funds, which was really outrageous. The most annoying aspect? She was still seeing her affair partner, and we had been apart for months by this time. Yes, mutual friends told me about that. She is trying to make my life as unpleasant as possible while living her best life. She would abruptly alter her mind or make new demands whenever we were on the verge of reaching an agreement. She seemed to take sick joy in seeing me squander money on legal bills. I could almost hear her giggling all the way to her boyfriend's bedroom whenever Lucas had to answer one of her absurd proposals. I attempted to re-enter the dating scene while Carolyn was working tirelessly to prolong the divorce and deplete my finances. I went through a phase of hooking up with random women from dating apps, which isn't my proudest moment. Downloaded Bumble, Tinder, and other apps. I tried to persuade myself that this was what it meant to move on by having a few one-night stands. However, each subsequent morning felt worse than the one before. Every pointless hookup served as a reminder to me of why I had declined Carolyn's proposal of an open relationship. That way of life simply wasn't for me. I've always been the kind of guy who wants to have a genuine connection, exchange inside jokes, and wake up next to the same person every morning. I felt empty inside from the whole casual sex situation, as if I were attempting to fill a hole with the wrong form. Other than job, divorce paperwork and failed hookups, I needed something to keep my mind busy. I used to read a lot, like stay up all night to complete a book, until Carolyn came along and life became hectic with 60-hour work weeks and monthly shouting bouts. I therefore chose to go to this small independent bookstore downtown one Saturday rather than browsing through dating apps or monitoring the emails of my lawyer. Cats napping in the windows, creaking wooden floorboards, and that wonderful old book smell, you know the kind. I felt totally disoriented as I stood in the sci-fi area because, obviously, the entire genre had changed while I was occupied with preserving my marriage. I'm referring to these big novels, series that were maybe 15 books long, and titles that I couldn't even pronounce. This woman next to me actually laughed. Not in a nasty way, just this gentle, delighted sound, which must have made me appear very pitiful, just staring at the shelves with this perplexed expression on my face. When I turned to face her, she simply smiled and asked if I needed assistance while holding this enormous book that might have been used as a weapon. I told her that I didn't know where to begin, but I was searching for some decent science fiction. The next thing I knew, she was teaching me the basics of contemporary science fiction while we sat in these comfortable seats in the corner. She was also quite enthusiastic about it. When she talked about her favorite novels, her eyes glowed, and she had the cute habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was thrilled about a series. A brief book recommendation evolved into a 2-hour discussion covering everything from contemporary space operas to classic Asimov. I told her about my old college faves, and she told me about a parallel universe series she enjoyed. For the first time in months, I had a meaningful conversation free of attorneys, divorce documents, and awkward Tinder pickup lines. I forgot all about Carolyn and the turmoil for those 2 hours. I was just a man discussing books with a stunning woman who genuinely seemed to be listening. I eventually plucked up the confidence to ask for her number after our spontaneous book club meeting. Something about her made me feel like a youngster again. Even though my hands were shaking as I put it in my phone. Pretty pitiful for a 36-year-old man. With her number, her recommendation for the 3 body problem and the first sincere smile I'd felt in months, I left that bookstore. It struck me how different our text exchange that evening seemed from all those pointless Tinder texts as I continued reading it again. Something genuine was there. I knew I had to disclose my ongoing divorce to her on our first actual date. I had mentally practiced this exchange a dozen times, anticipating her to flee when I brought up my insane soon-to-be ex-wife. However, Emma, yes, that is her name, simply took a drink of her wine and replied, "Thank you for being honest. At least you are addressing your baggage, which we all have." As simple as that. No criticism, strange glances, or awkward attempts to divert the conversation. She also made the joke that she wouldn't have to question whether a man she was dating was secretly married if he was going through a divorce. Emma was just the opposite of Carolyn. Emma would explain things gently during conflicts, while Carolyn would yell. Emma freely gave Carolyn the attention she demanded. She showed genuine interest in my work, recalled little details about topics I had brought up weeks prior, and never once made me feel guilty about going through a divorce. I felt heard and seen for the first time in years. The finest aspect. When we first met, I wasn't even trying to find her. In a bookstore, 2 people connected over science fiction without the use of dating apps or friend hookups. This stuff cannot be made up. After 5 months of dating Emma, I was completely smitten. She made me feel comfortable in every way, including sending me book recommendations while I was at work, leaving little notes in the books she lent me, and paying attention when I shared my day. However, Carolyn continued to put up obstacle after obstacle in the divorce process. She would always come up with a new way to drag things out whenever I thought we were almost done. Missing signatures, contested assets, suddenly remembered joint accounts. You name it, she tried everything. Emma was quite patient during this entire ordeal. She never complained about being with a technically married man or put pressure on me regarding the divorce. She would simply support me during the annoying phone conversations with Lucas and reassure me that this would also pass. I was at last beginning to feel content once more, not content to merely act that way. Naturally, everything went totally haywire at that same moment. I had just spent a wonderful Saturday with Emma. After shopping and eating lunch at this adorable tiny cafe, we were returning to her car in the mall parking lot. We were discussing what movie to watch that evening as the sun was going down. I'm listening to her giggle about something one moment and then everything in my life erupts into pandemonium. This engine screamed like if someone had stepped on the throttle pedal and I heard it before I saw it. As I turned to face the sound, I saw that this car was speeding directly at us, primarily toward Emma. I grabbed her arm out of pure impulse to pull her away, but I wasn't quick enough. Her leg was clipped by the automobile, and I watched in horror as it simply broke. I will never be able to forget the sound of her bone cracking and her scream. I tried to protect her body with mine as I slid down with her when she fell onto the pavement. I was about to dial 911 when I heard the tires squealing once more. The car's engine was still roaring as it backed up after colliding with another car. It dawned on me then that this was no accident. This driver was attempting to strike us once more. Emma's leg was bent at this terrible angle and she was crying in agony. I knew that if I didn't move her, we would both die. With my pulse racing so fiercely I felt it could burst, I grabbed her by the arms and pulled her between two parked cars. Every time she moved, she cried out in agony, but I had to continue. The car slammed into the cars we were hiding between as it charged forward once more. Every auto alarm in the area was activated by the crash's extreme violence. At this moment, people were yelling and racing toward us from all directions with their phones out. The entire parking lot was in disarray, with people shouting, car alarms going off, and Emma sobbing beside me. I swear to God that time stopped as the driver's door opened. Carolyn was there, getting out of the car as if she were going to a dinner party. She appeared just like she had when I last saw her at our lawyer's office, but now she had a crazy expression in her eyes that I had never seen before. With her hair styled flawlessly as usual and wearing the same blazer she used to wear to work, she appeared as though she hadn't just attempted to kill two people in broad daylight. It was made much more horrifying by the stark contrast between her normal appearance and what she had just done. This was my soon-to-be ex-wife, who had reportedly been monitoring us and decided that if she couldn't have me, she'd rather see me dead. This wasn't just some drunk driver or random road rage incident. She intentionally targeted Emma, who had never done anything but make me happy again, in her attempt to kill me. Something shattered inside of me when I heard Emma's whimpers of anguish and looked at her fractured leg. She had recently attempted to murder an innocent lady whose only crime was dating her soon-to-be ex-husband. So this was no longer just about Carolyn and me. Fearful that Carolyn might have a weapon or try to complete what she started, I kept one eye on her while holding Emma close to keep her calm. It was like watching someone change into a monster in front of me when Carolyn got out of that car. I hadn't been married to this woman for 6 years. Even the woman I had caught cheating in our bed wasn't this one. This was something very different, a furious being posing as my ex-wife. I was hit hard by the reality of what had just transpired. In fact, Carolyn had made a deliberate, planned attempt to kill us, not in a moment of rage. She must have followed us, waited for the perfect opportunity, and then made a conscious attempt to run us down in the middle of the day. I honestly believed she was going to try to complete what the car hadn't been able to achieve when she began to approach us, her heels clicking on the pavement like some kind of twisted countdown. Except for her eyes, which were blazing with a fierce hatred I had never witnessed, not even during our most heated arguments, her face was utterly blank. Thankfully, she was seized by a man who looked like a linebacker before she could get to us. Like some furious animal straining against a leash, she continued to try to push forward even after that. While I was attempting to calm Emma and examine her wounds, I couldn't take my eyes off Carolyn. This lady had slept next to me for 6 years, sat across from me at innumerable dinners, and discussed starting a family with me. Now she was here, having just attempted to kill my girlfriend and me in a mall parking lot. My head was spinning from the difference between those two versions of her. When someone you once loved enough to marry tries to kill you, how do you handle it? An ambulance arrived after the police, who were siren blaring. Emma was in excruciating pain as they loaded her into it, but she made an effort to grin at me to reassure me that she was all right. While the officers were handcuffing her, Carolyn lost all mental faculties. "It's only been a year, and you're already walking around with that asterisk, she screamed at the top of her lungs. Everyone around us recoiled at the sheer vitriol in her voice. In front of dozens of witnesses, she had just tried murder, and in her deranged mind, she somehow was the victim. That's when I realized how completely insane it all was. I genuinely walked in on this woman cheating on me in our bed with a male stranger. She was the one who violated our marriage vows, accused me of being the one who caught her, and, out of spite, prolonged our divorce. She is currently being detained for attempted murder while yelling about betrayal. Olympic-level mental gymnastics were displayed. She was acting as though I was the terrible guy for moving on after she ruined our marriage by infidelity. I felt as though I was in a distorted parallel universe as I stood there in that crowded parking lot, witnessing my ex-wife being crammed into the back of a police car while still yelling profanities and having my girlfriend's blood on my hands from where I attempted to assist her. My wife, who used to make me breakfast on Sundays and send me adorable texts while I was at work, recently attempted to kill 2 people in cold blood. What's the most absurd aspect? She really seemed to think she had a right to do it, as though I was the bad guy in this tale because I caught her cheating. I kept expecting Emma to tell me it was over every time I went to see her in the hospital. Who could blame her after all? His insane soon-to-be ex-wife wants to use her as a hood ornament 5 months after they started dating. Most individuals don't sign up for that kind of baggage. Because she had the misfortune of dating me, she had to endure months of physical treatment and had her leg in this enormous cast. When I informed her who the driver was, I was unable to look her in the eye. Instead, I just gazed at the hospital floor, waiting for the inevitable, "I can't do this anymore" reaction. "Well, at least we know she'll have plenty of time to work on her road rage in prison," Emma replied, just reaching for my hand. In fact, she joked about it. This woman was attempting to comfort me while she lay in a hospital bed with pins in her leg due to my ex-wife's attempted murder. She gave me a weird look when I asked her if she was certain she wanted to stay with me after everything. "Do you really believe that I will allow her to win? I'm going to walk again absolutely fine, and she's going to prison. I think I'm going to win this one." The office of the district attorney was obsessed with this case. It turns out that the entire event was captured in stunning high definition by many security cameras. The video was terrifying. Carolyn's automobile was the first to circle the parking lot, resembling a shark searching for food. She then parked and watched us for a bit. This, according to the DA, was important because it demonstrated premeditation. She didn't simply chance to see us and lose it. Instead, she tracked us, waited for the right opportunity, and made a conscious attempt to kill Emma. Before she shot it directly at us, they had video of her passing by our area at least 3 times. The security footage resembled a scene from a horror film. You could see how she waited until we were in the ideal position and then simply floored it as soon as she saw us. The first blow that shattered Emma's leg, Carolyn backing up for another attempt, and me pulling Emma between the cars were all captured on camera. According to the DA, it was one of the most obvious attempted murder cases she had ever seen. There is no place for justifications of heat of passion or transitory insanity. This was a cold-blooded, well-planned attempted murder that was captured on many cameras from various perspectives. The most bizarre aspect? Before attempting to kill us, she can be seen on the video inspecting her makeup in the rear-view mirror. She is not trying to commit double homicide. Rather, she is merely adjusting her lipstick as if she were going to a business meeting. This, according to the prosecutor, was another nail in her coffin because it demonstrated that she was fully conscious of and in charge of her actions. She wasn't a woman who lost her temper out of jealousy. Rather, she meticulously prepared to kill her ex-husband's new lover and meticulously applied cosmetics for her subsequent mugshot. Because, evidently, plotting to kill your ex's new girlfriend is more important than dividing up the china collection, the entire divorce process was put on hold. For months, I alternated between the courthouse, the hospital where Emma was recovering, and my job. Initially, my supervisor was kind, but I could tell his patience was running thin after I had to leave work for legal reasons 10 times. My ex-wife couldn't tolerate the fact that I moved on after she cheated, so I was living in the courthouse, burning through PTO like crazy, and spending hours with prosecutors. The trial itself was akin to witnessing a master lesson in the art of incarceration. Prosecutors have an ever-increasing mound of evidence. First, there were the security cameras, which showed Carolyn attempting to assassinate Emma from 6 distinct perspectives. The parade of witnesses followed, and it appeared like everyone in the parking lot had stayed to testify. This wasn't an accident, according to the stories of the soccer mom who witnessed the entire incident while carrying groceries, the teenager who captured it all on his phone, and the retired police officer who seized Carolyn before she could complete her task. This was an open-air murder attempt. Even though Emma's leg was still in a cast, she looked amazing on the stand. Without crying, she recounted her experience of seeing the automobile approaching, the agony of her leg breaking, and the fear of knowing Carolyn was returning for another attempt. I also had to testify, telling the jury about the threatening texts, the divorce drama, and how I discovered Carolyn cheating. Carolyn sat there the entire time, wiping tissues at her eyes and attempting to look regretful. The jurors saw through it all. The verdict found it guilty on all counts, including reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder. However, things became frustrating when the 12-year sentence was announced. She only has that. She was sentenced to 12 years for premeditated attempted murder, but if she behaved well, she may be released much sooner. Her entire, "I'm so sorry, I wasn't thinking clearly," charade was bought off by the judge. She sobbed as she described how she lost control and deeply regretted her actions. As I sit there, I consider how she looked at her makeup before attempting to murder us. I was given the following explanation by the prosecutors. First-time offender, no past record, expressed regret, etc. But really, 12 years? She made a cold-blooded attempt to kill 2 people. She planned it, tracked us, and if the bystander hadn't stopped her, she would have tried a 3rd time. Emma might have passed away. I might have perished. Additionally, if Carolyn behaves well in prison, she might be released in less than 10 years. You can try to kill someone in front of dozens of witnesses and still receive a shorter sentence than a man caught using drugs, which is only one of the peculiarities of the legal system. What really grabbed me though? Carolyn actually had the audacity to turn to us during the sentencing process and apologize, stating that she wasn't herself that day, as if there were ever a time when it was acceptable to try to kill people in a parking lot. Emma refused to give her the satisfaction of an answer, instead just staring her down the entire time. Even though 12 years wasn't what we had hoped for, it was at least 12 years without having to peer over our shoulder in parking lots. It's funny how a judge's viewpoint on alimony can be significantly altered by a murder attempt. Following the criminal trial, the divorce process abruptly became quite straightforward. Carolyn, who looked amazing in her orange jumpsuit, had to attend via video link from prison. The judge quickly put an end to her lawyer's attempt to fight for part of my assets. It turns out that judges don't feel too sorry for spouses who attempt to kill their former partner's new companions. The court isn't in the business of rewarding attempted murderers with alimony, the judge actually stated, and I quote this. She received exactly everything she had before the marriage, her personal belongings, her clothing, and her jail commissary account. Her lawyer's expression was priceless as the judge turned down each and every one of their demands. No claim to the house, no alimony, no portion of my 401k, nothing. She ultimately played herself after spending months dragging out the divorce, making absurd requests, and postponing appointments. She may have gotten anything in the divorce if she hadn't tried to make Emma a speed bump. Rather, she received divorce papers that essentially stated, "You get nothing," and a prison cell. However, I was unable to remain in that flat. Too many memories of that guy walking in on her. They were always there when I walked through the bedroom door. Emma and I discovered this fantastic location nearer to the city center. In fact, it's far nicer than my last apartment, has a great view of the city and, most importantly, the bedroom isn't haunted by the ghost of my cheating ex-wife. Emma is now completely recovered. It's hardly noticeable that her leg was ever fractured. She quips that since it permanently got rid of my psychotic ex, getting struck by a car was completely worth it. Dark humor, but whatever gets you through nearly getting killed is better, isn't it? I occasionally question whether I could have prevented all of this. Perhaps when she began picking fights over nothing, I should have recognized the warning signs. When she declined to continue couples therapy, perhaps I should have fled. To be honest though, insanity doesn't always raise a giant red signal. Sometimes it goes unnoticed until it tries to kill your lover in a parking lot. I can say I'm truly happy now, at least. Since we met through science fiction books and are currently living our own wild story with a happy conclusion, Emma and I are discussing getting married next spring. Carolyn will undoubtedly go eventually, but that is the purpose of restraining orders. In addition, Emma's father, who teaches firearms, ensured that we both obtained concealed carry licenses in case Carolyn decided to attempt for a second round after she leaves. Document everything, be on your watch, and maybe stay away from mall parking lots if you're going through a divorce or have strange ex-partners. Additionally, if you're seeing someone new after a divorce, you might want to investigate their background first, or at the very least, make sure they're not the kind of person who would try to kill someone over a split. Reddit, I appreciate you reading my bizarre tale. I'm interested in reading all of your comments, particularly the ones about cars. I guess your ex-wife really drove that relationship into the ground, is Emma's personal favorite. Oh, and I still go to the bookshop with Emma. No, we no longer park in that shopping center.